This is the October 17th, 2018 meeting of the Concord City Planning Board. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Chairman Woodfin?
Here.
Vice Chair Foss? Here. Councilor Champlin?
Here.
Member Fox?
Here.
Member Reagan?
Here.
Member Rosenberg? Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. We'll open the meeting. No alternates needed to be seated, so we will take a motion to approve the minutes as submitted under item 3. If someone would like to make that motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We don't have Matt or Ian here to be our first and second, so.
I'll step up.
Okay, David, I appreciate your,
Thank you, David.
appreciate your willingness. Okay, quick chair overview on a couple of items. We need to make a motion to move our November 20th meeting to Tuesday, the 20th of November. The regular meeting schedule falls the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and we've been requested to move that off of that date. So if someone would like to make a motion to move that November meeting to the 20th.
So moved.
Second.
We will take that. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. So any reference going forward to items being moved to the next meeting, that will be the 20th, and we'll just make those as normal motions. So right next is the motion to postpone items 5, 7H, 7I, 7J, 7K, 7L to the November 20th meeting. I'm not going to read those into the record, but if anybody's here for any of those items that were on the agenda, those items will be moved to the November 20th meeting. Would someone like to make a motion to postpone those items?
So moved. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 5 on our agenda is determination of completeness at 135 North State Street. A minor subdivision has been postponed. We don't need to make a motion for that, right?
You just made it.
We just made it, okay. And then number 6 is design review applications by consent, removed from item 6F from the consent agenda, and a motion to approve items 6A through 6E by consent, subject to ADR recommendations. Any member of the board wish to pull any of the items 6A through 6E off of our consent agenda item?
Point of information, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So, do I recall correctly that the recommendation on 6E was to decline?
6E.
Deny, rather?
Which was Paul Nails.
Yeah.
That
is correct.
I believe that's correct.
All right, fine, thank you.
Okay, so again, for clarification, so if if we leave that in consent, item 6E will be recommended to be declined on the agenda item, and 6F, the Concord Hotel, has been removed from the consent agenda. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Any member of the audience wish to address any of those items outlined in 6A through 6E? Seeing none, we'll take a motion to approve those items 6A through 6E by consent with, again, a motion or a notice that 6E is not being approved as submitted.
So moved, sir.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Look at us moving right along to item 7 on our agenda. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, if we could move into item 7, our public hearing sessions. We've got several items on the agenda, so let's read item 7A into the
Let's take 6F next.
6F. Oh, we pulled the 6F, but it hasn't been pulled. I'm sorry. So 6F, we'll push back to 6F if we can. Is the applicant here from 6F, the Concord Hotel? Come on up.
Do you want me to read that in the record?
Yeah, if we could read that into the record.
The Hotel Concord requests ADR approval to install a new internally illuminated wall sign at 11 South Main Street in the Central Business Performance District.
Okay. Welcome to the table. If you guys could state your names for the record.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and planning board members. I'm Michael Simchick, developer of Capital Commons and owner of the Hotel Concord in conjunction with my son, Jamie, who is someplace. So,
Skipped out on you.
he came in with me, but it wasn't my day to watch him.
Only saw 3 chairs up here, so he's gone.
Happens to me all the time.
And also with us, I have Anthony Mento from SMP Architects and Mike Leary from Sundance Signs.
Great. Could you tell us a little bit about your project? Give us a little quick overview.
Certainly.
I know we've talked about this, it seems, quite a bit. So if you could just give us a quick overview for the
Yeah,
record.
I want to be very quick, but I think it's very important to share the timeline and the diligence we've spent on trying to get this signage on the I-93 side of our building approved. This all started back in September of 17, staff meeting, where we heard that architectural lighting was suggested around the building. We heard that very distinctly, and we came back, and that has been incorporated into the building now. On March 21st of this year, we went to ADR for our canopy and our Main Street signage. That was approved. On the 12th of June of this year was an early meeting for I-93 signage, and we had 3 signs proposed at that point in time. It was the Hotel Concord, O's Restaurant, and Red River Theater. Again, we heard at the ADR that 3 signs were too much, and we ratcheted that back to simply the Hotel Concord sign. On July 11th, we went to the ZBA for the first time, and we withdrew that request and came back on August 1st and received 2 variances. A 4-to-1 vote on the square footage of the signage, which was 330 square feet, and a 5-0 vote in favor on the location of the signage above the second floor on the I-93 side. On September 11th, we went to the ADR to speak about what had been approved in terms of signage and location, or size and location for the signage. We listened intently, and we heard that the ADR would like us to shrink those letters from 4.5 feet high because they felt they were being pinched by the windows at the top and the bottom, and also to shrink the square footage from 331 feet to 260 feet, roughly a 20% reduction, even though we had been approved for the 330 square feet. We listened very intently. We came back, let's see, when did we come back? On October 9th, with a reduction of 20%. And after presenting to the ADR, it was promptly moved to be tabled, and it was unanimously tabled by the ADR. Before we left that meeting, we asked the ADR if there was anything we should be contemplating for further changes, or if they had any further criticisms or comments about our signage. And the comment was that we had met everything they had asked us to do. After that, we were a little puzzled in terms of what the next step should have been. After consultation, we decided to keep this slot on the agenda, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for moving us off the consent so we could actually speak to this. And so now we're here to ask for approval of the signage, which is 20% less in size than was approved in terms of the signage size at the zoning board. With that being said, I just felt it was important to share that timeline because this has been a significantly lengthy process, which we have not had any problems with, but we also wanted to make everybody on the planning board aware that we've been very responsive and wanted to work very closely and did work very closely in responding to what the ADR had requested us to do. Saying that, I'd like to turn it over to Anthony Mento for a minute to give a brief description of the sign and the project that we're looking for.
Good evening, all. So what's been requested is a very simple, minimalistic, internally illuminated dimensional sign that would be applied to the facade of the Capitol Commons building. As Michael noted, it's been reduced a couple of times, but very simple format, very elegant, simple design, not a lot of color or flair. It's just to recognize that the property, Main Street downtown, has a independent boutique hotel, and that we're unselfishly trying to get individuals off the highway into downtown to stay, to dine, to shop, and this is our best approach. The building itself does not allow any other types of signage that can be visible from I-93, and so this is why we've come to you for this approval. Mike Leary, if you want to speak about the sign in the distance.
The distance impact from 93 and any place you can view it, there is a Penn State did a traffic study, and using their index that they came up with, we're looking at 48-inch letters, which is a 1,200-foot read. The highway pushes out at 1,200 to 1,600 feet, depending on exactly which angle you're reading it at. Visibility of it outside of the I-93 is only at the very storefront of the plaza across the street, and really nothing from surface roads in Concord. There's slight glimpses of it in place to place. So that distance of 1,200 feet and 48 inches really fits a readability standpoint.
I think that's really our presentation. Again, trying to keep it brief. We're more than happy to entertain any questions and try to respond.
So the ADR minutes make mention that they reduced the sign from 320 square feet to 256 square feet. Does that still mean they're 4-foot letters?
They were originally 4.5-foot tall letters.
Okay, so now they're 4-foot letters.
They were, yes, it was actually 4.5 feet by, I believe, about 71 feet in length. And the 20% reduction was bringing it down from 4 feet, from 4.5 feet to 4 feet, and it came down to, sorry? 261 square feet, but about, I think, 60 or 61 feet in length.
The whole sign proportionally was reduced.
In length and height?
Correct.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. So I haven't had a chance to talk to Liz Hengen, who I know was the person who made the recommendation to table the application. I do think, just reading the minutes and knowing the conversations that were had, I think the issue is not as much the relevance to the other hotels in the area, it's the relevance of the downtown corridor, where the city's just published some hard-fought city guidelines on the downtown corridor, what we want for signage, what we don't want for signage. As I read it, the issue really is, what's the next one that gets a sign? What's the next one in the corridor? And how do you move down Main Street for all those buildings on Main Street facing the highway are then going to say, hey, I want a sign, I want a sign, I want a sign. And I think that's the issue more than it is this. So I think they asked, you were asked to do several things, reduce the signs, show us the night visions. The night renderings look very good. I don't have any questions. If any member of the board has a question regarding the sign, that's the issue, really. The crux of the issue was setting precedent and moving forward. Obviously, zoning has a big say in this, so zoning is going to dictate what can go up and what can't go up, and then we kind of follow suit with, is it aesthetically correct, and is it in keeping with what we want? So you've got your zoning variance. That's the big piece in this hurdle. So does any member of the board wish to address it?
I'll just,
Yep.
may I?
Yes, sir. Sure.
You know, I have a lot of respect for Ms. Hengen, and I have respect for the ADR. I also have sympathy for the applicant in terms of, you know, kind of going through the hoops and having this delayed. I know that in the minutes of the ADR that it was mentioned to have a joint meeting. You know, if that's the intent, I would want that to happen expeditiously, just because, I mean, personally, I think this is a very appropriate sign design, you know, and we've been talking for a long time about some of the issues that were brought up in ADR, which is, you know, what do we do about Concord's, you know, back door, and how do we make it more attractive? And personally, you know, I think this signage does make it more attractive. You know, I know that I've been to Memphis, Tennessee many times, and the sign for the Peabody Hotel is one of the landmarks. Now, it's a huge red neon sign that's on top of the roof, and you're proposing...
Don't give me any ideas.
And you're proposing...
We started there.
And you're proposing something that's much more modest, you know, so, you know, if it's necessary to delay, I would hope that the delay would be as minimal as possible.
So we did address that. We did talk about that, internally talked about that with the planning staff. Two disparate organizations like that, it's not going to happen from the standpoint of the zoning board getting together and meeting with the planning board in an open public forum, which is where we'd want it. It needs to be, zoning needs to have their say, planning needs to have their say. ADR and planning could certainly get together and have a meeting together, but for this particular application, I don't think there's no way we're going to be able to get those two organizations or those two groups together to then come up with some policy and some pieces of the puzzle that need to be put together. So while I agree that we need to be all on the same page, the zoning board and the planning board aren't going to be they're not going to come together in a public meeting to discuss the the individual pieces. Yes.
Well, then, my next question is, how do we act upon this expeditiously for the applicant?
Well, I think the way to do it would be to look at it, what's been presented. Do we want to approve it as it's been submitted, not with the understanding that we're going to table it or go back to ADR to have a meeting together with the zoning board, look at it on its merits as it's been presented to us today, knowing that they've gotten the zoning variance, and then be able to address it going forward with any applications that come in with zoning directly. So let the planning staff, the zoning board, the zoning staff work together, and then the boards themselves individually.
I understand. I think that,
Yes, somebody?
No, I don't know if I missed it, but I wasn't sure if we had stated what ADR's actual recommendation was, and I just, for the record, wanted to state that, maybe you just
They
did.
tabled it, yeah.
They recommended tabling it to have a meeting with them, so the board can either, as, I think you took care of it, as Chairman Whitfin just stated, you can either decide on now, or you can choose to accept that recommendation.
Right, and again, I think that the merits of the sign need to be looked at, again, with the understanding that zoning's approved it. We then can look at it with ADR and decide where we want to go going forward. If this was a marquee type thing where it's going to set the tone for the rest of the back of the buildings, it might be a different story, but like you said, it's relatively understated. It's in good taste. I don't think it's a red blinking neon sign.
Yeah.
That would probably precipitate a little different discussion. That make sense?
yes, thank you. And in closure, I would be inclined to approve it.
Okay. David?
As would I. I think it's a very tasteful sign, and the renderings are wonderful.
So, and again, I think
Good statement.
I think the issues before us, as we've been presented them, that's what we need to look at, and then let staff deal with the internal issues of how we want it to go forward. Any member of the audience wish to address this application? Okay, so we'll close the public hearing. Anyone like to make a motion to approve this as submitted, or any recommendations to change or table?
I will make the motion to approve as submitted, Mr. Chairman.
I would second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. We dot the i's on that, okay, Lisa?
You did, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. We're skipping right over it. Okay, now we'll move on to item 7, the site plan subdivisions conditional use permit applications. If we could read item 7A into the record.
James Neef requests an amendment to an approved subdivision plan to allow a driveway within the 50-foot buffer easement at 105 West Parish Road in the open space residential
Okay,
district.
is the applicant here? Come on up.
Do you want me to give a summary?
If you could, yeah.
Sure.
Please, Beth, thank you.
So this was a subdivision that came before the board, I believe in 2012. At that time, it was when we still did minor subdivisions as cluster subdivisions. So there's an easement on the 3-lot subdivision and the 50-foot perimeter buffer around the edge of the property is under conservation easement. Mr. Neef purchased the property, he's building a house there, and I went out to the property. There's an existing logging road that goes through that buffer, and based on conditions, which he can mention at the site, that's preferred location for his driveway. He went before the Conservation Commission last week, and they approved allowing the driveway to go through that portion of the conservation easement. So typically, this would have been dealt through a driveway permit, but because it was a cluster subdivision, he's
gotcha.
before you tonight.
I got you. Okay. Well, she did a pretty good job of telling us why you're here.
Yeah.
If you
Thanks,
could,
Beth.
if you could state your name for the record, sir.
James Neef.
Okay, and you're the property owner, Mr. Neef?
Yes.
Okay. Could you just tell us a quick little bit about the project in your own words?
Yeah, the property's on a hill, and we're going to obviously put the house up on the hill, so it's a fairly long driveway. I'm a designer, so I don't like straight things, I like curvy things, and the first time we went there, we kind of looked up the driveway, and it was all grass, basically, because it's been growing there for a while. So we kind of found that logging road through the trees, and we thought it'd be nice to kind of curve it through the trees, and so when you approach, you would just see this grassy, almost like a hill slope, like a ski hill. So we wanted to take advantage of that. I had no idea about the 50-foot buffer. We figured that out, but so we wanted to use, first of all, curve it around an existing, there's sort of a wet area too that I'd have to be dealing with, so it kind of two for it. It goes around the wet area, so I don't have to deal with that. And also, it makes a nice curvy driveway, and it also kind of shields the driveway from the road. You wouldn't even really see the driveway as you enter the property, because it kind of disappears into the woods, and it would, by the time it crosses that kind of existing cut, like grass would all shield it. So it's half design, half using existing, so.
Okay, I have to ask, what's games on your plan?
Cornhole and.
Okay, so a little grass
horseshoe.
area, a little flat grass area.
Yeah, I gotta
Sorry.
there's a nice outcropping there that I'm gonna kind of.
Okay, and the snow storage spots are there, are treed now, or are you gonna be cutting any trees?
No, it's all clear now.
It's all clear now.
So, yeah, I don't want it all going down to the bottom of the driveway, so I'm giving them some space to pile it
Gotcha.
up.
Okay. Any member of the board have a question for this applicant? No? Yes, Byron?
I'll make a comment and say it was a very nicely presented design.
Oh, thanks.
Along with the butter comments.
Tom's a good guy.
Yeah, well, it was a nice, clean plan. Thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Any member of the audience wish to address this application? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. You're good to go. Thank you very much. You can step back. Any member of the board have any questions, comments, like to make a motion? Well, we've got a couple things on here. Any other comments for staff? Okay, so in our recommendations here under 3.1, we've got a couple of, we've got one waiver. Grant glasses, get new glasses. Grant the waiver to section 12034 to not have a New Hampshire licensed professional engineer sign and stamp amended construction plans. Any issues with that?
No, it's, if this was a driveway permit, it would be required to have a PE,
Okay.
and the design was stamped by a PE.
I
so.
gotcha. So let's take that waiver, granting that waiver under 3.1 as an individual item. If someone would like to make a motion to grant that waiver as outlined.
So moved.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 3.2 is to grant approval of modification of the minor subdivision approval to redevelop an existing logging road for use in the residential driveway within the 50-foot perimeter buffer at 105 West Parish Road, subject to the following precedent and precedent conditions to be fulfilled within 1 year. And those are addressed in precedent condition A, oh, come on, A, B, and C. If someone would like to make a motion to approve that modification to the minor subdivision approval as outlined.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. You're all set. Thank you very much. Item 7B on our agenda. Could we read that into the record?
Item 7B, the City of Concord requests Planning Board review in accordance with RSA 67454 for a minor subdivision to allow a lot line adjustment at 77 and 109 Old Turnpike Road in the Industrial District.
Great. Could you state your name for the record?
My name is Dan Mullen from Richard Bartlett and Associates.
Okay, could we get a quick staff update on this?
Sure, it's just a lot line adjustment to create, there's an existing 0.14 acre parcel adjacent to the landfill property. So they're just moving that line to create a larger 1.767 acre parcel to build the future fire training facility. There's no capped landfill under this portion of the landfill
This
site.
is north of the landfill, right? Kind of up behind the
Northeast,
businesses that
yep.
go up there? Okay. Okay, could you give us a quick overview, Dan?
Sure. How do you rotate this?
Yeah, I don't know. At the top.
I'm trying to also.
I was doing it this way. I was sitting here and I was like,
The way we can make this.
Tell the rest of us how do we flip it? How do we,
I don't know if we
Rotate it.
can't, I can't figure it out myself, so I'm not sure if we can.
well, they did it.
But they're not
That's
using
they're in a
Granicus.
laptop. They're in a laptop, so we just need to upload them so that they.
where's
are-
Ian?
I haven't been able to figure out how to freeze it.
Oh, yeah, you can't turn it.
Rotate and then freeze?
Yeah. I can't.
If you open it,
If you go the other way, will it? You're right if you flip it that way. That was flips. Can't get it.
Okay.
We all good?
Yep.
Okay. City of Concord owns 2 lots on Old Turnpike Road. One is number 77, and it is the existing landfill at map 110, block 6, lot 3. And they also own an adjacent vacant lot at 109 Old Turnpike Road at map 110, block 6, lot 8. And what the city is proposing to do is annex 1.53 acres of lot 3 to lot 8. So this small triangular lot right here is the one at 109 Old Turnpike Road. It's 0.14 acres. And they're proposing to remove this diagonal line. And they're going to create a new lot line right here. So this 1.53 acres will be annexed to that lot for continued municipal use. So what the result was is that the existing landfill is 57.45 acres. It'll be reduced to 55.92 acres. And the small lot is 0.14 acres, and the resulting lot will be 1.67 acres. As part of this application, we also asked for a few waivers. Section 12.03, subsection 5, for not delineating wetlands. And the reason for it is because of the historic use of the site of the landfill. There are no suspected wetlands in the vicinity, and there's no proposed improvements in that area. We're also asking for a waiver for section 12.08, subsection 1, to not show property lines on the remainder of lot 3, since we show the area of the proposed lot is sufficient to prove that there's enough buildable area in the area. And we're also, for the same reason, asking for a waiver of section 12.08, subsection 3, to not show topography on the remainder of lot 3 for the landfill. And we were also asking to waive the requirement to bring the site to NABD 88 vertical datum. The reason being is that there are monitoring wells and other data associated with the landfill that has been used since the 1990s at NGBD 29, so it only makes sense to keep that data consistent. The last waiver we're asking for is section 12.08, subsection 5, to not depict natural features on the remainder of lot 3. And again, we're showing just the information for the proposed lot area, and there's sufficient usable and buildable area on the landfill itself as well.
Okay. Any other comments from staff? I noticed here, no, nothing else, right? All the comments. Okay, any questions from the board? Any member of the audience wish to address this application? Okay, we'll have you stay right there, Dan, in case you have a question, but I think we're all set. Okay, so under this, we have item 2 in our packet. We've got waivers. We can address those waivers all as one. If someone would like to take them separately,
Nope.
yes?
No, the recommendations are in 4.1.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Since it's 67454, if you have any feedback, you can provide it. Otherwise, there's no actions.
There's no actions on ours, right? Okay, so 674-54-2 is basically here to tell us what's going on, but nothing's going to happen on ours, so we just need to make a recommendation if we have anything outside of that. Nothing. So we just send him on his way, and he's good to go.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'll bet we're going to hear about what's going on on that property, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just a question.
Yes.
If they're requesting a waiver, who grants a waiver?
Well, it's a city-owned
What entity?
property.
We don't, so they're not required to, we just sort of as best practice like to say, if this were to go through the regular subdivision process, these are the waivers that would have had to been granted.
Thank you.
So everybody knows what they're up against.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's read item 7C into the agenda.
The City of Concord requests Planning Board review, also in accordance with RSA 67454, for a major site plan, erection of a fire training facility, and a conditional use permit to allow a second driveway where only one would be permitted at 109 Old Turnpike Road in the Industrial District.
All right.
Staff, I believe, is going to give an update on this issue.
We'll welcome the applicants to the table and accept a quick staff update if we could on it, or overview on it.
Sure. This is that same property that you just approved the subdivision on. It's to construct a fire training facility, which will consist of a training building with a garage, a structure, some Connex storage containers, and then a large paved area with parking for training for the fire training facility. They're required to have, or it's been recommended to have 2 driveways just for ease of movement through the site, and if any fire truck has to leave for an emergency, it still provides them access. That would require CUP. We would support it because of the public safety issue, as well as it's very minimal volume. It's not going to be used with high traffic, so we would support that.
And there's plenty of room out onto Old Loudon Road, or Old Turnpike Road.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, welcome to the table. If you could state your names for the record.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Carlos Bailly. I'm the Deputy City Manager for Development.
Good evening, Dan Andrus, Fire Chief.
Good evening, Dave Cedarholm, City Engineer.
All right, well, why don't you tell us a quick story about the project if you can, and we'll move on.
Sure, we'll make it brief. So this is a project that has been in the works for probably around a decade at this point, perhaps even longer.
The site was recommended in a study that was conducted in 2006.
2006. We have been trying to locate an alternate site to the current facility that they use. They're down at Kiwanis Park, Kiwanis Riverfront Park on Loudon Road. It's not a great facility down there, and it also impedes some of the recreational use of the Riverfront Park. We located this site probably 2 to 3 years ago, have been working to get to this point. We've got a good team, our city engineer and our fire chief here. We're basically here to answer any questions. This would be a training facility that would be used on basically an ad hoc basis when the fire department is able to get out there. It's difficult when they have multiple calls to have training opportunities. This is a centrally located facility, which is one of the key geographic reasons that we used to locate here on Old Turnpike Road. It has good access. It's a small site. There's not a lot to it. And I think it would be good in terms of development of the public safety component of our city. Thank you.
What's going to be on it? How many buildings?
There's going to be, well, at this point, there's one building. It's a training building, a small training building, which is right at the northeast corner of the site. The rest of the site is largely paved. That's what we foresee happening for the next several years, is basically being a paved location to do some water exercises and some small burn exercises using the Connex boxes, which are those sort of freight containers you see down at the Riverfront Park today. In the future, if City Council was amenable, there could be a later phase where they might actually put a training structure, which might have some altitude to it, some height. But at this point, that's not contemplated in the current plan.
Is there still a tower down in Kiwanis Park? That tower that used to be down there?
No, those buildings were demolished about 2005.
Oh, good.
They were
right on top of things.
The
Made way for the rowing in all the facility. Okay.
Yeah, if they've been gone for a while, they were absolutely decrepit.
Yes. Okay. Anything else? Any questions from the board? Yes, John?
Just one cautionary note that I'm sure you're aware of, that there are certain chemicals used in fire training areas that require careful management. That's sort of occurred since 2006, and I'm sure you're well aware of that.
Actually, I've been studying that at polyfluorinated alkyl substances. PFAS,
yep.
And the Franklin Fire Department has a significant issue with large underground movement of some of those materials, and we've been very aware that they're particularly prevalent in firefighting foams. We won't be using anything like that. We actually won't be using any salt on the property due to the impact on the surrounding landfall and water areas. And thanks to the diligence and expertise of our new city engineer, who has a background in that particular field, he's been a very good guide through educate us.
Good job.
Great. David?
Having been on the Concord Crew Board for the last 13 years and served as its president for a while, I'm sad to see you guys go. My question would be, what happens to those steel buildings behind our boathouse?
We take them with us.
Okay.
We anticipate reuse. They generally have about a 5 to 10 year life. We've done very well, and when we proposed the concept to the manager about buying these and then configuring them so that there was a multi-level structure, he said, I get it. He said, it's a firefighter habit trail. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
And that foam comment would be explain why our kids are having 2 heads now. And
no, that's we actually have used foam.
They practice in the foam just to
Yeah, we've learned a few things, and PFAs are prevalent, and just one more thing in our environment that makes it wonder that any of us made it past 30.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. We're sensitive to that, and we were certainly excited to be moving on and to see that land continue its trajectory as recreational use. It's a great site.
It's a great site.
Good deal. Any other comments? No? Okay, you're good to go. We don't have any recommendations other than what's been outlined, and you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, guys. All right, moving right along, let's get to item 7D, if we could, on the agenda, if we could read that into the record.
TF Bernier Incorporated, on behalf of Strategic Contracting LLC and Leslie and Steenbeck Replicable Trust, requesting minor subdivision approval for a 3-lot subdivision and lot line adjustment at 126 Snow Pond Road in the Residential Open Space District. I think staff has an update.
Sure. This is a 3-lot subdivision with a lot line adjustment. They are going to potentially annex 2.29 acres from lot 53 to lot 58. And then lot 58 is the subject of the subdivision, the creation of 3 lots. There is a conditional use permit associated with this project for lot 2. With roughly 3,200 square feet of wetland buffer impact with a driveway. Reason being is the buildable area of the lot is well set back from the road, so they need to extend the driveway through a wetland buffer to reach the buildable area to make this lot viable.
And the record tells me that the Conservation Commission has recommended approval of the CUP in that conditional use permit, right?
That is correct. The applicant came before the Conservation Commission on October 10th, and it was a unanimous approval, recommendation for approval.
Okay. Mr. Bernier, you must have been watching us on TV. You got here just in the nick of time.
I was standing in the hall.
Welcome. If you could state your name formally for the record.
Good evening. My name is Tim Bernier of TF Bernier Incorporated. We're here on behalf of Strategic Contracting. We prepared the plans.
Great.
What I've done is I've kind of combined the 2 plans. It's a long lot, it's 26 acres, just under 26 acres total. It has frontage on Snow Pond Road, which is to the right, and Shaker Road to the left. The 3 lots, there's a 2-acre lot on Snow Pond right here. That's a 2-acre lot there here on Snow Pond. This is Gorham Road, if you're familiar with the area, comes in right here. There's a 16-acre lot here. These large white areas are wetlands. So one of the lots here is 16 acres, but there's a lot of wetlands in there. There's a 5-acre lot here, which fronts on Shaker Road. And then in addition, there's 2.3 acres here that's kind of isolated. There's a culvert underneath Shaker Road and drains down through here, right down this property line. And the Steenbecks, who own this property right here, expressed an interest in purchasing some land for a buffer. So just 2.3 acres is being transferred to them in a lot line adjustment. Well, it's not a separate lot of record, it's a lot line adjustment. It's going to be merged with their lot. So there's 3 new lots there. The driveway, the building envelope is about 700 feet out here. So the engineering department asked for some pretty good detail. There's this location right here is where the buffer impact is for the conditional use permit. There's a wetland that a little finger wetland that comes up that now looks like a lollipop because the skidder went back and forth through it about a zillion times and really stretched it out. But that's what we're buffering to. That's the buffer that we're impacting. And this driveway is relatively long, and the hill just keeps going up from there. So we spent quite a bit of time making sure that there was sufficient drainage under there to transfer that water. We received, actually today at 3 o'clock, we received state subdivision approval for this. That's the only other permit that were required for this. And that's the project. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Pretty straightforward.
Any member of the audience wish to address this application? No? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll send you back, Tim. You're good to go. Any other questions, any comments, any concerns? Our report that's on here, we have under 4.1 is to grant conditional use permit for Article 2843 to impact 3,252 square feet of wetland buffer. The applicant states that the only way to access the building area is in Lot 2. The Conservation Commission has recommended approval of the CUP for the impact of the wetland buffer. Go right into motions, Heather, is that okay?
Correct.
So we'll take a motion to grant that conditional use permit as outlined. If someone would like to make that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And 4.2 is to grant minor subdivision approval for the minor subdivision subject to the following conditions to be fulfilled within 1 year and prior to endorsement of the final plans by the planning board chair and clerk unless otherwise specified, outlined in conditions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Someone like to make a motion to grant that minor subdivision approval as outlined?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. You are all set. Thank you. Okay, let's move it on. 7E, is that 7E is not one that was pulled, right? So 7E, if we could read 7E into the record?
Jonathan DeWick, on behalf of Granite State Baptist Church of Concord, requesting major site plan approval for the construction of a 18,242 square foot 56-space parking lot and associated landscaping, grading, and drainage improvements in the industrial district.
Okay, a little staff update on that if we could?
Sure. The board may recognize this site. Another
The board does recognize this site.
Sure. So there was a recent...
Recognize the gentleman here to present to.
Right. There was a recent site plan for this site for an addition on the front end of the church. There's a waiver associated with this site. It was one that was granted for the previous site plan and is being requested again just for consistency. As Heather mentioned, this is a major site plan for 18,000 square feet of parking and 56 spaces.
Okay. Welcome back to the table. If you could state your name for the record.
Thank you. Peter Chamberlain. I'm the pastor of Granite State Baptist Church.
Your voice gives you away, Pastor Chamberlain. Okay, could you tell us about your project?
We can. On the south side of the existing driveway now off 236 Sheep Davis Road, we have just put in the addition. I don't know if anybody's gone by there.
It looks great. Are you all buttoned up now? Last time I went by a couple weeks ago, we were still working on the front addition. Is it all?
Well, we're starting painting tomorrow.
Oh, great. Congratulations. So, it looked great.
We still have some steps to put in the front there.
Hard to imagine that was a decrepit old...
It's come a long ways.
What was it? Tractor supply?
Golf cart repair place.
Golf cart repair, yeah.
Golf cart repair place. So it's come a long ways, but it has laid out nice.
Great.
And so the flow is going to work really well.
Excellent.
And so in conjunction with that, we are looking to build a new parking lot on the south side of the driveway. And so 56 spaces to accommodate, and then also to be able to connect coming across the driveway there for ADA access coming into the new addition on the front there. And so the retention area that we currently have will be reconstructed to go north to south instead of east to west, and also to accommodate the current 35 parking spots we have, and then also the new 56 that we're putting in. And so that's a summary of the project. We're looking to move forward. We're using it as, it's a gravel area now, and so it's wide open now, so we're using it as overflow parking because the necessity's there throughout the week. So it's going well.
Okay. Well, it's good to need more parking, I guess, right?
It is.
Okay, and any, there's no issues staff-wise as far as impervious surface or anything like that? This is the most detailed landscape plan I think I've ever seen as far as it's too bad Suzanne wasn't here to appreciate the October Glory and Rocky Tops and Happy Returns and all the different plants that you listed there. So I can't tell you that I know any of them, but
I can't either. I just
the plans as we see them on Plan 3 on our packet, the top part of the parking lot is what goes right into the building, right? So the ADA goes right out, away from the 2 handicap spots into that, right? Okay. Any member of the board wish to address any comments or concerns with this plan as it's been presented? No? Any member of the audience wish to address this application? Nope. Seeing none, we'll close our public hearing portion, and we will send you back, Pastor. Thank you for coming again. Hopefully, we don't see you until you're ready to expand again, right?
Well, I've come and seen you enough, so why don't you come see us now?
That's it. Thank you for the invitation. Okay, on that note, we'll move to our recommendations section here. We've got a few recommendations to grant a couple of pieces, a couple of waivers. No, just one waiver.
All the board are appreciating.
All the Catholics on the board are appreciating it.
Won't fall down, it's okay.
One of the Methodists is enjoying it as well. Reconstructed American Baptists, so.
All right, in our recommendations under 4.1 to grant architectural design review approval for construction of the new parking lot and associated landscaping, grading, and drainage improvements. Someone like to make a motion to grant that architectural design review approval?
I move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's been made.
Second.
And seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Item 4.2, to grant the waiver to Section 138E to not provide soil tests and soil surveys due to the fact that USDA RCS web soil survey data does not use and confirm via on-site observations, and because a septic system is not needed. Did you catch that, Lisa?
Of course I did.
All right, want to make sure. 4.2, would someone like to grant that waiver as outlined?
I move that we grant the waiver, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And 4.3 is to grant the major site plan approval for the proposed redevelopment subject to the following precedent and subsequent conditions noted below, and those are precedent conditions 1 through 4 and subsequent conditions 1 through 4. Would someone like to make a motion to approve that major site plan?
I move major site plan approval, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's been made.
Second.
And seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, you're all set. Thank you very much. And let's move on. 7F. If we could read that into the record.
Can I
Yes.
jump back for a
Yep,
minute?
sure.
I just realized that we did not determine,
We
we did not make a motion to determine the completeness of the minor subdivision.
Which one was that?
Berniers. So I think. we
Okay,
should
so you're
just-
all set, Pastor. Thank you.
Yeah, you're there, sorry.
So 7D.
I think we should just, to have it on the record.
Yep,
so
okay.
we have a formal motion
So
for the minutes in the.
we had a determination of completeness component, right?
Correct. We
Okay.
just need we need a motion
So
on the record for that.
let you say it. So you have determined it complete?
Correct.
So we have a determination of completeness component for item 7D. Would someone like to make a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that's now on the record, and we will move on to item 7F.
Correct.
Okay.
TF Bernier Incorporated, on behalf of Harold E. and Judith Ekstrom, requesting major site plan approval to construct a new 4-story building for 38 apartments and associated site improvements at 56 to 64 Warren Street, 32 to 36 North Spring Street, and 17 to 19 and 21 Green Streets in the Civic Performance and Downtown Residential Districts. This was previously determined complete, and staff recommends opening the public hearing.
Okay, is the applicant here? Come on up, and if we could get a quick staff update, and if you guys could just sign in there, that would be great.
Sure. So they'll represent what this project is. It's a large-scale multifamily for the elderly development. They're going to be demolishing some existing buildings on Warren Street, reconstructing some driveways and a parking lot, and they've requested a conditional use permit to not have all the parking on 21 Green Street and instead use parking on an adjacent parcel. Staff is supportive of that with a condition that a legal document be provided that there's parking provided in perpetuity.
Okay.
Right, are you all set with?
Sorry, we don't have enough chairs for you. Okay, anything else? That's it? Okay, if you guys could state your name for the record.
Sure. I'm Tim Bernier, TF Bernier Incorporated. We prepared the plans for Harold and Judith. Harold is here.
Harold Ekstrom, and as far as the owner of the property involved.
Great.
Chris Carley, CN Carley Associates. We're the architects for the project.
Doug Greiner, G2+1. I'm the landscape architect for the project.
Okay, if you guys could tell us about your project?
Sure. So last month, the board got a little bit of a primer on this when we did the lot line adjustment consolidation. The project involves 12 current lots that, as part of the lot line adjustment that we did last month, reduced it down to 5 lots. So we took the 12 lots and got rid of a bunch of lot lines and merged them together. That's what took place last month. So this month we're talking about the site plan, what's really going to happen with the land. That last month was all political boundaries, lot lines, and the like. So this is an existing conditions plan of the site. The site is located on, this is Warren Street down here. We have Green Street. It's located here. City Hall is 1 block up. This is North Spring Street. And there's currently Greenwood Avenue in here is a private city-maintained street that serves these 3 buildings and a large parking area that's presently out there. So that's the existing site. There are 7 structures in here that are going to be raised. There was an 8th and a 9th on this lot here that was taken down in 2016 for safety and other issues. So there are 7 remaining. We have a garage here, a residential structure here, and these 2, and then there's a mixed-use office and residential here. On Green Street, these are all commercial buildings. They're involved in the project in that lot lines were adjusted on these lots, but very little other than that is occurring. Same thing with lot 11 up here, which is on North Spring Street. Lot lines were being adjusted and some grading involved on this lot, but otherwise not a significant change on that property. So these buildings that you see in here are all going to be raised and create a lot for the new development. And so this kind of gives you an idea of what was there. And for what we're proposing, this is what we are proposing. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit, make it a little bit clearer. That's not what I wanted to do. So after the buildings are gone, we're proposing a 38-unit multifamily, 55 and over, market rate structure in here. We're making improvements to the existing driveway that comes down in here, making improvements to this driveway, which is now Greenwood Avenue. It's going to be eliminated and just become a private driveway. Completely reconfigure the parking lot. We have a net less impervious surface in here, more green space. Reconfigure the parking lot for this commercial building here, out back. Behind it gets reconfigured a little bit. There are 4 parking spaces here in the abutting lot that was talked about in the CUP offsite parking spaces located here that are going to serve this commercial lot. So in here we have 48 parking spaces, 30 of which will be covered with covered parking. So there's 38 units, 48 parking spaces. The regulations require 38, but we are putting 48 in because 1 per unit is a little thin, even though that's what the regulations allow. There's kind of 2 fronts to the building, as you'll see with the architectural version of the building. We tried to create a real pedestrian entrance on Warren Street and encouragement for people to walk down Warren Street and down to Main Street and take advantage of all of the facilities that are around this area of downtown Concord. In the back of the building would be primarily where the residents park and enter the building on a day in and day out basis, and where deliveries would come and go. There is a dumpster facility here. It's completely enclosed to service the building. Walkways going around for both fire purposes as well as getting pedestrian people moving around the building. The design review committee, one of the changes that you don't see here is they felt that this kind of curving in here directed people in a direction. So we're going to flare the end there a little bit on both of those, just so that the people walking don't feel like they have to head in one direction or other. That was a recommendation, design review, that we're going to make. Quite a big improvement to Greenwood Avenue, especially where it accesses Green Street. The existing is a two-way road. It's only about 17 feet wide, which is generous. We couldn't get the full 24 that's required, but it's a lot closer than it was. I think it's 22 feet wide, and we reconfigured it considerably to be much more friendly and usable for people getting in and out onto Green Street. Maintain this access, which this driveway continues through this parking lot. It comes out on School Street, mostly just fire and maintaining that current access way that's there currently. Making some improvements to this driveway as well, and keeping that two-way out to Spring Street, North Spring Street. One of the things that has come up with this is power. So we had a meeting with Unitil out there, and we looked at every single pole around here to try to figure out how to do this. There is 3 poles in front of the building here, and the wires that ran from this pole opposite Federal Street here down to pole number 9 are all going to get eliminated. So we're able to eliminate all the overhead power lines in front of the building, which is good, because the only thing that those lines did was serve the buildings that were here, which we've raised. So we're getting rid of one pole and all those lines. This pole is right on the corner of this street and directs lines down Warren Street and then down Federal Street, and that pole is extremely busy, and there just isn't enough real estate left on that pole to even put another pipe on it. Unitil didn't feel that we had any chance of coming in off of Green Street, because the lines are pretty well maxed out as far as usage goes on Green Street, and they just didn't feel there was enough there to feed a large building like this. So we're kind of stuck up here on North Spring Street. And North Spring Street restrictions are forcing us into bringing overhead utilities across North Spring Street and putting one pole in there is the only way that they could come up with a way to do it. And then we're going to go underground from there all the way down to the building. Currently, there's overhead power that runs in Greenwood Avenue to a pole located roughly in here. It serviced all those buildings that were here. That's all gone. That's all going underground. There'll be no overhead power anywhere in this area. That'll all be gone. But that one pole does require a waiver of the site plan review regulations, as noted. Something that kind of came up, and we didn't get that in ahead of time. If the board would entertain it, we'd be happy to submit a written request tonight if the board would consider it. But we didn't get that in, and really there isn't any other way. We looked at it. The problem up here and bringing underground under the street is that the green strip between the curb for North Spring Street and the sidewalk is the width of a telephone pole. So if they were to bring a down pole to put it underground on the other side of North Spring Street and bring it under North Spring Street, it would come down and take up 6 inches of the sidewalk, which is already pretty narrow. And you really can't do that. It makes it impossible to plow and maintain and everything else. So it really, we looked at every one of the poles up and down here to see if there was some way we could do that, and it's just, you end up in the sidewalk. You end up taking some of the sidewalk out. So we do end up with that one pole. That's the only waiver for the project. The project is permitted by right in the zoning ordinance. We're not requesting any waivers. We have more parking than is required. But we just couldn't get that one pole. We have fewer poles, but we're getting rid of 2 other poles, but we're having to add that one. just for a view coming down North Spring Street, there's a lot, all the power is on this side, all the poles are on this side of North Spring Street, and they serve all these buildings by going overhead. And looking at, I felt one thing that we can do is we can eliminate the overhead electric that currently runs to this corner of this building and bring that underground from this new pole, so we'll have no net increase of lines going across North Spring Street. We're going to eliminate one and add one. But I think that's about the best we could do. So that's the only waiver request that we're going to need.
Hey, Tim, before you move on, so tell us again, there's a waiver that you need that you didn't apply for?
We have not requested yet. I did write one up tonight, if you would entertain that.
How does that affect us, Beth or Heather, as far as this plan?
That's fine. I mean, they're requesting it now. I don't.
Okay, so as long as we read it into the record and address it that way, it's fine. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, continue.
No, thank you.
If I could just note one thing on the utilities. Engineering did ask that they look at bringing power in from Green Street, and they did look into that request with Unitil.
They didn't?
They did.
Okay.
To do that. I just wanted you to know that what they're proposing there, where we've talked with them about, and they've looked at an alternative that wasn't feasible, so we're okay with the request.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a pole down here that we're actually relocating, and we had all the utilities that went in on Greenwood Avenue, and we just assumed we could run all our utilities in there, but Unitil took one look at it and said, no way. So we were backtracking after that. Drainage, we're still working through some minor things. We actually were working today on it with Bryant. The drainage currently runs through a pipe, goes underneath some buildings here, and comes into this manhole. We're going to bring the drainage around, come down through here, and tie in the same location, not the same structure, but the same location. And we're going to do a kind of a combination of things, infiltration and other things to get the pre and post where they need to be. But that's pretty much the site. There is, because this is a big, long, flat building, and there is a very slight grade to Warren Street here. If you walk down it, you'd think it was flat, but there's actually a little bit of a slope. So we had about 4 feet of grade change from one side of the lot to the other, and we split it. Because for handicapped accessibility through here, we pretty much held this grade to get into the building so that it's easy in and out, which gave us a 2-foot cut and fill on either end of the building. We're dealing with that on this side because this building is so close. We needed to put a retaining wall in here, which is only 1.5 to 2 feet tall, that runs along the backside of this walkway and comes around and curls up into here. It made for a good opportunity for some landscaping, which you'll hear about in a bit. And the Ekstrom's kind of like the idea, what they would like to do, it's not very tall, it's only 1.5 feet to 2 feet, but they're getting a lot of large granite cut block from the foundations from the house that that they're getting rid of down in here. So they're hoping to use the foundations from those houses to build that retaining wall that runs along here. So that's that, and I will turn this over to the architect, Chris, to kind of go over the really important stuff.
How do I advance the page here? I'd like to get to the...
Go up to the...
You tell Tim to.
Yeah, you want me to tell me what page you want, and I'll run it.
Let's go to page 3.
Page 3.
There you go. This is a view of the building from Warren Street, looking toward the east, northeast. The building is 4 stories high. There's a full basement under it, but you don't see any of that. The surrounding architecture is, for the most part, small scale. The buildings that are being replaced are, I guess, 2- and 3-story. New Englanders, 19th century buildings, some of them in not great, but that tends to be the character of the buildings on that particular part of the block of Warren Street. Immediately to the east, at the next block over, we come to the Firehouse block, and there's an apartment across Warren Street from that apartment building that's 3.5 stories, I think. So this represents a change in scale and a little bit of a change in texture. The building is a couple of feet below the zoning height maximum, so it is within the envelope that the ordinance envisioned when it was written. We have designed it in conjunction with extensive discussions with the Design Review Committee and the Planning Department on the subject of the architecture, and the design that you see is intended to break down the scale of the building and also to mitigate the effect of the height as you see it from Warren Street or as you see it from the parking lot on the north. And in order to do that, as you see the building moves in and out, the facade moves in and out, and I should mention that one of the zoning variances, we did get a zoning variance, and it was to bring the building closer to the street than the ordinance would have allowed by a couple of feet. And the reason we did that is that that's where all of the existing architecture is now on that street. It tends to be quite close to it, and it creates an architectural wall along, so to speak, along the side of the street. And it seemed, and we were encouraged in this by the planning department, that it made sense to continue that line, so we did so. The building does push in and out in the floor plan, and we have divided it using materials as well. There's the sections on the end are red brick, as is the large section in the middle, and then we're imagining a different color brick, a lighter color buff brick, in the two sections that intervene between those. And then the top floor is actually pulled back from both the Warren Street and the parking lot, north parking lot sides. And the materials change up there, with the exception of the stair towers, to synthetic stucco and metal. The green that you see would be a metal roof. It's in something of a mansard configuration. And the facade is also manipulated to some extent, given texture, by the fact that there's a balcony at each apartment. They range in size from, they're all around 6 feet deep, 6 to 8 feet deep, and they range in width across the building depending on their location. Let's back up to the elevations. This elevation is, can you read that? They don't look that much different from this angle.
I think that's the south.
Okay. South elevation is the Warren Street elevation. The east and west elevations are essentially the same. They're mirror images of each other.
I'm sorry, that's the north elevation.
See, they don't look much different.
I'm testing you.
Even the architect can't tell the difference.
Oh, with the door.
Yeah. This is the side. We anticipate that on the north side, would be the main entrance and exit for tenants going in and out of the building, because that's the side the parking lot will be on. And you see a canopy, which also is a balcony in the middle. That represents the public tenant entrance to the building. The floor plans vary as you go up through the building, but the first floor, there's some common space, which is represented by the large windows, and then all of the smaller windows represent apartments going on up. The building looks like a block in this view, but it is, as you'll notice in the perspective, a little bit deceiving because of the way the roofs pull back and the facades move in and out. It's actually much more varied and plastic in facade than you would think by looking at this elevation. Can we look at the next one?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
What's the green square? When I was looking at this at home, I couldn't figure out what it was.
The green square is a suggestion by my client, and I obliged. That tower is on the east end of the building, which is what you will see as you walk up Warren Street from Main Street. And the Ekstroms felt that was a little bland, that tower, and a little severe, and asked me to put some artwork at the top of it, which also would help distinguish the building from other buildings around it. So essentially what it is it's a metal panel in relief in a pattern, and there would be, as we envision it now, there would be light behind it. It would be opaque, but it would be softly lit behind it to pull it off at night from the side of the wall.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice idea, by the way.
Well, actually, you should thank Joel Ekstrom. It was his idea.
I was looking at him when I said it.
Yeah, okay. I was prepared to take credit if he hadn't been here.
I know, that's why.
I knew I'd get caught. This is the south elevation, at least if Byron will concur, and is the Warren Street entrance to the building. It is, again, intended to create a entrance presence on Warren Street. You can walk in and out of there as a matter of routine. It goes through a common space. That common space would also be used as a common room. The apartments are intended for people who are probably going to be moving there from other houses, larger houses in many cases, than they're living in now. This is, for lack of a better term, empty nester housing. And the idea...
We'll make note that Beth referred to it as elderly housing. We'll
Yeah.
strike that from the record permanently.
That was in their application.
Permanently.
I
So
was
senior is
quoting them.
okay, but no elderly.
I'm afraid that's the way the ordinance is written, so we may have to change that, too.
Age restricted.
Age restricted.
Yeah, age restricted.
That's what I would call it.
Even better.
And that's, that particular space that you see in the middle is the common room. The apartments are a nice size, but if you wanted to throw a large party, in many cases, the apartment would not be a good place to do it. So the idea is that it could be done on the first floor in a common space.
Are these all single floor apartments?
Yes. Yeah, single floor. They vary in size from studio up to 2 bedrooms, depending on where you are.
So I imagine elevators on the floor and then everything feeds through the middle. Is that how it works?
There's an elevator in the middle, and there'll be stairways at either end for emergency egress. I don't expect those would get regular use. I suppose there'll be somebody who uses them, but there will also be a stairwell in the middle so that if people who wish to walk up and down can do so. And as Tim mentioned earlier, the building is designed so that grade slopes right up to the doors on both sides of it, so that if you have limited mobility, you can walk right in without having to go up any steps. And with that, I think I've covered the high points. I'd be happy to answer any questions or turn it over to...
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Because I came on this board very sensitive to balconies, and I'm sort of trying to look at my screen. The balconies that, if I get this, there are balconies above the main entrance.
And also on other places on the building.
And I would turn to my fellow board members to clarify me, because that was always an issue.
You can see where the rail.
The balconies are over the property, correct?
They're on our
Private
property.
property.
So tell me why that doesn't concern us.
Because it's not over city property or over sidewalks.
It's not over a public right-of-way.
Okay, so, okay. It's
I
the
think there's
liability really comes,
Well, there's a roof.
a glass falls off the railing up above that entryway and
It
somebody's
would hit,
walking
it
out.
would hit somebody. Right.
It hits somebody.
Yes.
But we don't care.
Well, no, we certainly do care, but.
You might care if you were the person walking out.
The property owner, as long as it's not the city, is.
Right. So, okay, so I guess the
That's the
criteria
issue
for
with
balconies.
is private property versus public right of
All
ways.
right,
Yep.
that's where you lost.
Or road, if there was an alleyway that went down the side, or there was public space that the balcony overhung, then it would be, we'd have a concern.
Does the building owner have any concerns about drinks falling off that balcony?
No, I believe where they walk out, the roof there comes out maybe beyond the balcony.
No, it doesn't.
Same. But I don't have any concerns, and
Okay.
primarily because of the age that is.
The responsible.
Over 55 doesn't drink.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying that.
We drink heavily,
Probably
heavily.
more under control.
Responsible drinkers.
Yeah, right.
They're past the point in life where they toss their glasses after they finish their drink.
All right, I'm clear though on why we're not concerned.
Why we're not concerned.
That was more of my question.
Were there any other questions?
let's try to hold the questions, and we'll go one more.
right.
Well, let's hit one more.
Mr.
and then we'll
Griner
come
is
back.
the landscape architect and will now take the floor.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is, just push the red button. You
I've
can.
got that. I'm wondering if you can
Zoom us in a
maybe
little.
blow it up a little for the building area. Well, as I go through it, you might.
Where would you like to start?
I'll just start, and you can maybe start. I'll give you some guidance where I'm trying to get a little more focus. Sure. Overall landscape, I mean, this project was a joy to work on. The building is wonderful, and to be included in a team to provide landscape finish for something like this doesn't happen all the time. One of the big things on the building, okay, you've got two entries. You've got the north entry, which is really serving the residents from the parking, and then the south entrance, which is what I sort of visualized as more of your streetscape entrance from people on Warren Street. You also can people that might be coming out of the stair towers and come down on that front sidewalk. There's a lot of ways that people are going to move around on the site. There are a lot of opportunities. With the north and south entry, you know, they're basically treated as you can see, there's not a lot of space between the facade of the building and the park and the sidewalks. So strategically, what I do is I try to work with a massing of plants, massing of a variety of woody plants, and then there are perennial beds that sort of act as accent elements alongside those beds. On the north side, well, on both sides, you're dealing with concrete modular paver or possibly brick pavers on both of those entry features. It's not concrete. We're going to go to something that's got what I call a little more sparkle. There's some granite blocks suggested on the north entry that you can see those squares right next to the building are basically accent blocks that just add a little vertical scale and detail to what's going on in there. Bear in mind that what is occurring on the plan is a patio area, but there's a large rectangular roof overhang going over the whole thing. And so plantings are kept outside of that roof overhang so that they can get some natural rainfall. You can put plants under the roof overhang, but then you're forced into drip irrigation in order to keep them alive. On the south axis, I approached the patio a little differently. I actually, on the plan, showed two options. On the left-hand side, I'm showing three Adirondack chairs and a small little table on the hardscape. On the other side, I basically put a ground cover bed on a shade, what I call dry, shade-tolerant ground cover underneath them with two granite bench seats. At the time the plan went together, the idea was just to explore options on how we could treat these entries, because it was a great opportunity to do something other than just have a walk go straight to the front door. As you progress around the building, there's a streetscape tree planting program along Warren Street. I designed by habit of growth. I've been in practice for 46 years, and you learn a lot of things over that period of time. And what you don't do is just put a plain old maple or big old oak tree in, because the canopy of that tree, I may not be around when it happens, but when that tree matures, that tree canopy is going to be about 30 feet or 20 feet into the building. So by habit of growth, what are proposed in the front there are some Coosa dogwoods, great form, lots of flower, and then there's two, to alternate the scheme, there's two paper bark maples. Again, the form is nice, but one nice thing about the paper bark maple is the way the cinnamon colored bark kind of separates from the trunk. So you got that kind of interest. So that's really the approach. The trees are picked, one, for interest, for flowering, but they're also picked in order to not encroach on the building and on the street itself, because we didn't have a lot of room. Now, an alternative, obviously, you go to columnar maple trees. That'll go 40, 60 feet tall, but my design option or prerogative was to stick to what is shown right there. On the other side, where we have even less room and there's not so much of a streetscape, there's a cluster of small flowering trees near where those sort of indentations are on the building elevation. And again, the goal is to get some vertical accent on both sides of the building in that process. The ground floor patios, you can see the patios have there's sort of an X marked where the rectangle is. That's the ground floor patio for those units. There's a small, let's say a low hedge that could be Everlow yew, red vein Anchianthus, some varieties of hybrid mountain laurel, but they're all plants they're somewhat compact. The idea is just to give the people a sense of some enclosure and privacy, but not create a barrier that ends up 10, 15, 20 feet tall. Because they can, I believe, even on the ground floor patios, you still got railings around those?
Yes,
So,
and they're not actually at grade. They're, at that point, grade would go down.
yeah, but for the most part, they're grade. Okay.
They're 6 or 8 inches above grade.
Well, that's okay. Okay.
No, that's a lot.
Yeah, but that's all right.
Yeah, and they do have
That's
railings.
jumping grade. Okay.
Yeah, or you can throw a glass.
Throw a body off of it. Okay. Larger canopy deciduous trees. Okay, as you progress through the rest of the site, if you want to zoom out a little, Tim, there are larger canopy trees that are interspersed through the rest of the project. Some are on the entry drive off of North Spring Street along that edge. There's some that are abutting the edge of the carports. A few of them on that parking lot that got reconfigured for one of the buildings on Green Street that's being retained. Again, the goal was get some larger canopy trees in there where we actually have the room to do it and not interfere with buildings and things. Some of them are combined with some flowering trees, particularly the way they've been massed on the end of the one, let's say on the east ends of the carports with a mixture of some shrubs and perennial beds. And I think I have some decorative grasses in there. There are a couple places that I've tried to assign space for snow storage. If you look at the area where there's a cluster of evergreens on the west side of the carports, there's some evergreens there for screening of that residential property. But there's a little edge of space for some snow storage because there's an issue. You try to provide screening, but at the same time, if you introduce too many plants, you lose all the plants when you're trying to find a place for snow. So there's a wedge of area where those evergreens are, where the access drive comes in right at what would be the southwest corner of the carport there, and then there's another one near that, on the edge of that parking lot that's being reconfigured. Even though that there's some perennial beds on the curb edge, it's still a large space where some snow storage could occur. Another big issue was the dumpster. I always inherit these, and so on the dumpster area, I've basically suggested, well, there's a good mass planting of evergreens and some low flowering border plants and a couple flowering trees in there, so that if you're on that walkway, you will not know that that dumpster is there. I think there was a worksheet that also showed a low edge of berming. I don't know if we kept that in there or not. So we could potentially have a low sort of foundation wall, maybe like a wing wall for the enclosing the dumpster area, and then you could berm up against that, and then you could get the plants on top of that so that that thing disappears. Because people want the dumpster close by because they don't want to walk very far with their garbage bags, but then they don't want to deal with it in the dog days of summer when it might be somewhat aromatic, but you can mitigate that with the plantings and the screening. You can't have it both ways. Perimeter walkway, there was some discussion, I think, in the design reviews On the walkway on the east side, maybe what we're going to do is ease the alignment of that walkway on the east side of the building so it's not so articulated. It'll be eased and softened, and we'd also be changing or modifying how they intersect into the public sidewalk on Warren Street. Curvilinear retaining wall on the west side. Tim had mentioned that the goal all along was to try and build that out of recycled foundation, granite foundation blocks. Considering the number of buildings there and the photographs that I've taken of 2 or 3 of the foundations that were exposed, from my way of thinking and from past projects, I think we got a gold mine of granite blocks to really work with. And it would be a nice way to sort of reiterate the history of the site and the history of the property by trying to reuse those granite blocks. If I tried to intersperse those also in some places on the north entry. I treat the granite blocks that can get recycled as a great asset to the landscape. Snow storage, we talked about that. Existing tree count issue in terms of trees that we've made an estimate of the trees that are going to stay. There's a big maple right there. You can see there's your typical 40-foot crown diameter. And then there's a number of deciduous and evergreen trees up on the north end of the property boundary. We've noted on the plan those that would be preserved, and I know there's concern on whether they survive construction, so there'll be a note added to the drawing in terms of what tree replacement would occur should any of those be lost. That's sort of an overview of what that total landscape was, and if you've got questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay, let's, so we heard from everybody, so let's start with some
There's
questions.
one more architectural piece that I...
Okay, yeah, please do.
You want me to do that first?
Yes, please. Yep, please.
You'll notice...
Oh, you want to go back to that?
You remember what it is?
Yeah. And, yeah, in the north parking lot, north of the building, there are 2 structures. They are carports. The one at the top of the page there is a single-depth carport, and the one immediately to the south of it is a double-depth carport. Those are 3-dimensional structures. Let's go to the architecturals.
What's in the middle there? What was that little hexagon thing or whatever that little...
I think that's a topo line, isn't it?
Okay.
Yes, finished contour. Yeah.
It's a driveway.
Okay.
4.
Yeah. Blow it up to see it. Okay. And then can we get rid of that?
Close that, yeah.
Side, I think. Yep. Yeah, there we go.
I watched.
Yeah. These are the carports, obviously the large and small ones, as seen from the ends and also in 3 dimensions. They would have, except where the cars go in and out, they would have walls on the sides of them. The openings are not windows, they're just openings, but it's intended to break down again the scale and give it a little bit of daylight on the inside. And the carport that is on the northernmost end of the site, which at the elevations that you see at the very top of that page, is the one on the right. On the right-hand side of it is a solid wall, which is the back wall of the carport, so that where the carports butt the neighbors, and that's pretty much the only place they're close to them, the lights and so forth would not go through the back of the carport. There's a wall there.
So there is a residential rental unit here. So this is blocked by a wall. And we're preserving, these are trees that are existing. Some of them are already in pretty tough shape. We show those as being removed. And the ones that are still healthy enough we kept. So these are full-size existing trees. And then the carport is a wall so that there won't be any headlights or anything pointed that way.
And that's it on the architectural side.
We didn't see a lighting plan, did we? So
there is a lighting plan.
There is a lighting plan?
Yep.
Okay.
That may be subject to change. Obviously, we would review that with planning if we did change it. But we've had some discussions with the owner and with the lighting designers about it. But if you want to take a look at it, I'd be happy. Is it in the package here?
It's in the regular.
Yeah, it's not in our package.
Okay.
Did it get, is it in?
I forgot to add it in. It was a separate document.
Okay.
I just remember that I forgot to add it in.
I didn't bring it either.
There is a lighting plan. It would be a combination of bollards immediately around the building along the walkways that are about 3 feet high. All the fixtures would be LED fixtures. The pole fixtures, of which there would be a few, would be on 20-foot poles. And they're again, the LED flat plate type of fixture. The discussion that we had with the lighting designers and with the Ekströms, which is a little bit in progress, and obviously, as I said, we would review this with City Hall if we made any changes. But we're contemplating eliminating some of the poles in favor of lights actually on the carports that would shine, that would be lower because the top of the carport fascia is about 8 feet off the ground, but would give enough light in the walkways and in the driveways. We're also in discussions with our designer about a system for dimming the lights such that after certain hours, the lights in the parking lot would be at a very low level unless there was traffic in the lot, in which case they would rise up again for 10 or 15 minutes and then drop down again. And there also would be lights inside the carports for safety and comfort, so that when somebody gets out of a car, they can see who's around, or who's in to get into a car, they can see who's around them and not have dark nooks and crannies.
20 feet pole seems to be really high. I mean, I'm in a residential area, it seems to be a high.
It's all of the 20-foot pole. As poles go, it's a fairly standard height. It works with the type of fixture that we're talking about. Yeah. But obviously, we could go to lower ones. It would mean more poles and more fixtures. The fixtures that are on poles are all. Can we look at the site plan? Yeah, there we go. The fixtures that are on poles, this guy makes.
Just push the red button now.
Okay. They're all in this area here. So they're actually not along Warren Street or adjacent to the residential areas. There is one at the moment that's shown in this area, which I think we're actually going to eliminate. And then there was, because of, it's not really directly, I don't want to shoot anybody in the eye with this thing. Yeah. Doctor, shut your eyes. There's one here that I think we might eliminate, and there was another one on the left side that I think we might eliminate in the process of design development. But the other poles, the 20 poles, are all in here. They're pretty much wherever the red beam is. Clearly, I'm not the guy harassing the pilots in the Mideast. In this area right here, so they're, for the most part, they're concealed from the street anyway by the building.
Okay. We do have, engineering has reviewed it, and there was some comments. We've got a couple of spots where we exceed the allowable, so it does need to be amended from what was submitted, but it has been reviewed.
You have a copy?
For compliance.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. That's fine, Beth.
You don't want to see
Yeah,
it?
that's fine.
Okay.
So yes, there's a lighting plan.
Okay.
Okay.
I just point out a couple of things too of the landscaping plan. We got an opportunity to meet with some of the abutters. There are two owner-occupied single-family residential homes that abut the project. One of them was located here on North Spring Street, and the concerns that they raised primarily had to do with this existing use, which is a boarding house. And in the design, taking in her concerns with this use and the difference between essentially an owner-occupied single-family residential and a boarding house, we were able to create this green strip here that doesn't exist currently, and put some pretty substantial plantings there to try to help that situation as best we could. That's an existing use. The lot was reconfigured in order to allow for an improved driveway access, but otherwise isn't being changed. So that's one. And then also across on Warren Street, Gene and Paige have submitted a letter I'm also in a butter. I used to live right over here. I still own the building. So Gene and Paige were my neighbors as well. They submitted a letter with some comments and concerns as well. Tried to address that. We've eliminated the overhead power through the front of the building here, which will definitely help a lot. Their concerns were parking or people possibly using Warren Street. There's no parking on the north side of Warren Street. Currently, it's not permitted. There is parking on the south side of Warren Street. It's 2-hour parking, so it's not really ideal for residential use. It's having worked across the street here for god awful long time. It's perfect. 2-hour parking is perfect for the YMCA. We used to call it the parade of gym bags. Doesn't really work but well for anybody else. So that's usually who utilizes all of the parking on Warren Street is the Y. The other concerns were snow removal. We actually have less snow areas that need to be cleared in this configuration than exists currently. And Harold's, this is going to be Harold's project and Joel's, and they're going to use the same people to move the snow when this is done as they currently do. We actually have more and better places to put snow now than we in the current situation, but there are years that currently they have to haul snow off-site, and there will be years where they'll have to haul snow off-site in this configuration as well. And the other concern that we have some say about it is a concern about recycling, recycle bins. This is more than 8 units, so it's commercial by city regs, so it's not eligible for the city picking up garbage. That's why we have to have a dumpster, because we have to contract with a private person for that. So I don't believe that they'll be able to put anything out in the street and have it picked up. It's not it's considered commercial. Right now, and also because of that, they are not, the people that live here are going to, their garbage is taken care of by the owner of the building, so they're not going to have to pay to do that. That's part of the cost, so they're probably not going to recycle as much as somebody who has to pay for the bag for everything they don't recycle. So there isn't specifically a place for collection of recyclables on site, but we don't really see it being a huge issue. So those are the concerns that were raised by the abutters that we were aware of.
Did you address any or discuss any of the issues around the upkeep on the other properties owned by the same owner that were outlined in the letter that you brought up?
The maintenance of the others?
Yeah.
I guess I'll let Harold.
Maintenance of which one?
There was some concerns raised about, maintaining and paint and improvements to the exteriors of some of the other properties on the street.
So the houses that are being demolished are all non-conforming uses. And part of the impetus for the project was the fact of getting at a decision as to, do you try to put some money into fixing them up, or do you just start over? And on that basis, we felt it was best and made more sense just to start over, and also because of its particular location close to downtown. As far as maintenance goes, there may be some painting at 66 Warren Street. We had planned to add a fence, and 66 Warren abuts this property. And then at 32 North Spring Street is where the other rooming house is that was addressed by in part by the trees that were going to, the row of trees that were going to be installed.
Was that one of your properties, the rooming house, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So basically there are plans to maintain
those two properties.
Those two properties. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Did you have another question, Byron?
I did.
Okay.
Relative to the paper bark maple, what is the crown? What's the general size of the crown of the paper barks?
I think we're looking at about 20. As a practicing geezer, my memory isn't as good as it should be. You're looking at 20 to 30 feet tall, 10 to 20 foot crown diameter.
Okay. And that big maple tree that you, that
That
is
maple
being
is,
saved, that's about 22.
That's
I
a
think.
22-inch diameter.
A 22-inch diameter.
Diameter trunk, and the crown that's drawn there is about 40 feet in diameter.
Right.
It was roughly that.
Yeah. It's funny, I was downtown last night having dinner, and I happened to notice the paper bark maples that we have in front of the Store Street parking garage of the cities, and they're kind of, they're not very colorful trees.
Well, they're there more for the form and for the bark.
Right.
The kusas will offset them with the flowering that they do. For me, it's a judgment call to try and provide a little variety rather than what I don't like to do is design in a monoculture where you got vast areas of all the same thing. Because if one pest or virus or something comes in, you lose it all. So
That's good.
So you try, what I try to do is I design by diversity and I design by habit of growth.
Well, that's good planning, and certainly that's a policy that the city has adopted in the replanting. Thank you.
But if the paper bark maple is a deal killer, we can certainly find an alternative.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to call it a deal killer. I just like our traditional New England maples. I mean, with they're so colorful, particularly this time of year. You realize how colorful they are.
But those traditional maples, the bulk of them, if you read the trade books, are 40 to 50 to 60 foot in diameter. 40 to 60 feet tall. Now, I don't have to worry about that. I'll be long gone before they reach half that size.
Be optimistic.
Well, no, that's okay. I got issues. The thing is, there are some columnar maples that could be used and that are only going to be about 20 to 25 feet in diameter. The downside is availability. They're not always in the pipeline.
Yeah.
One of the problems that I'm facing in all the design work I do now is landscape material is a hit and miss. If you don't get it in early spring or late spring and early summer, you'll spend the rest of the summer and fall trying to track stuff down. The growers stopped growing things in 2008 when the crash was there, and now what's happening is we're waiting for stuff to come back to a size that's marketable.
Yeah.
So.
All right, let's move on.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, that's it.
Carol, did I see your hand go up and I shushed you before? I apologize. No? No? Anybody else? Teresa, David? No? So I had a question on traffic flow. So how do you imagine the site being used? Again, I'm sure we'll hear from some residents regarding the project, good, bad, or indifferent. We try to anticipate some of those questions, and you've addressed some of them with the dumpsters, snow removal, lighting is always a concern. Traffic flow is going to be a concern, certainly if it's coming up onto spring.
So we did get a comment from someone up on Spring, wasn't a direct abutter, but had concerns about traffic, mostly speed on North Spring Street. People using this as a cutoff to get through, to bypass Warren Street or something came up. And in looking at it, there is not a light situation. There's no real reason or advantage for somebody to try to use this to miss a light because there isn't a light. And this is all commercial down here. I would much rather come out of Warren Street than try to get on Green Street here. It's just a much busier spot.
Come out on Green Street, or come out on Green as opposed to Spring, not Warren. It doesn't come out on Warren, right?
Right. No, there's no access to Warren. But if I was trying to get from this end of town to downtown, I just really don't see it. But if it ever became an issue, we'd put speed bumps in or something.
What about the property directly to the top of the plan here as it goes through that existing parking lot onto what, School Street?
School Street, yeah. There's only 38 units here. It's 55 and over. So some people will still be working. What we envision for a lot of this, 55 is the youngest that you can be to be here, which means that these are going to be
still very young.
It's still very young, but the average age will probably end up being mid-60s because of the cutoff.
So 38. Sorry to interrupt. So I just wanted. So it's 38 apartments. How many parking spots?
48.
48 parking spots. So you're not anticipating 2 cars for everybody that's coming in?
Correct.
So again, assuming that those 38 people, half of them are leaving every single morning and going into town or going out, you primarily are anticipating the traffic to go onto Green Street. And will there be any type of, is that your parking lot, Harold? Do you own that
Yes.
parking lot?
And currently, there's 60 cars that park there on a pretty much daily basis.
Okay, so there's no restrictions for them to go up and take a right onto School Street and then hit the better intersection to go from School Street down into town, or take a left on Green or right on Green? Just, again, I'm looking at it realistically, you know, a year from now when people are using, or 5 years from now when people are using it, if it gets approved, how are they gonna be moving through the line? Because it's a bear to come out on Spring Street. You don't wanna, I mean, this car's gonna be parked all the way along Spring on that right-hand side, and it's tough getting out when you come out down off of School Street even, never mind the Blake or whatever the street is that comes up by the library. That's almost impossible to get up out of there.
Yeah, you know, these are small units. The anticipation is we're going to put bike racks in that are required, really trying to encourage pedestrian people to use that's really the thought. We're going to have people who want to go to Florida for the winter. We anticipate that. So, we have a lot of different options. They're probably it's going to depend on where they're headed. If they're headed west, they may go North Spring Street, but I would guess they're going to come out onto Green Street.
There's actually going to be like a bike shop in the basement of the building too, for people there to use bicycles.
Oh, nice. What, so 38 apartments, 48 parking spots. What do you do when somebody's got an RV, somebody's got a boat, somebody's got a...
Not going to be here.
Not going to be there, okay? And again, anticipating some questions that we may be getting. Structural mechanicals, where are the mechanicals going to be found on the property?
There will be a mechanical room in the basement for some parts of the mechanical equipment, and then I expect we probably will have small-scale condensers on the roof, multiple small-scale condensers on the roof. We imagine using split units, heating and cooling, heat pump type units in the building. You wouldn't be able to see them from the ground. And we don't anticipate any mechanical equipment, at least at the moment, on the ground or visible on the site.
Okay, and you're still good with the height restrictions as far as, I mean, those are little small condensers, right? So you're not going to be pushing up past your height requirement issues as far as the 4-story. You said you were within a couple feet of.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I don't know whether we would have to get forgiveness for doing that or not if they were invisible. Conceivably, we would. But since we haven't designed the system yet, I don't have a good answer for that. What we won't have is a large central package unit up there.
Again, thinking, for the neighbors, you're thinking of big blower units up there, you know, clicking on and clicking off or something.
The type of units that I imagine putting up there, as I said, you wouldn't be able to see them from the ground. They stand about that far off the roof.
And that's a far better alternative than dealing with the condenser units on the ground.
Absolutely.
Right around
the trees and the plants.
Everybody wants them to be screened with landscape, but you can't do it because in the hot weather, they cook the plants.
Absolutely. Okay, any other questions from the board? Questions from staff?
We just had, Suzanne sent a comment in about the Coosa Dogwoods, just their, how hardy they are, if they're suitable for right along the street.
Well, they're hardy for, I mean, they are Zone 5. Usually I never go beyond Zone 4 plants, but the Concord is known for a lot of Zone 5 plants surviving, and there are a lot of them in town.
Are they good with salt?
We don't have, they're off from that edge of the road. They're in a lawn panel. I would have to check on that.
Yeah, it was just something she wanted us to bring up about.
They're going to get bathed in salt. They'll get a lot of salt. Because there's no cars, they'll be coming up pretty good. Okay, so that, we'll note that.
We'll check
I want to
that.
read to the record a waiver request before we take some public testimony, before we send you guys back. So if you've got that and can read that, you can give it to Lisa or to Heather, and we can read that into the record. And this is, again, a waiver for the pole.
One new utility pole.
One new utility pole, which will be on the east side of North Spring Street at your property line. So you said it takes up the entire width of the space. Power's going to come down that pole and go underground. You're going to eliminate the power to feed over to the existing building that's there on the corner, and all your properties will be fed underground.
Correct.
Can we read it in?
Sure, can I just make a
Yes.
comment? I just, for the record, wanted to commend the design team. They came very early with this project to staff, and they came back multiple times they were very responsive to staff comments, to ADR comments, to apparently the butters comments, and I think that it was a coordinated, process where we worked together, and I think it made the project better, and I just wanted to state that for the record.
Yeah,
they did the project the right way for such a major project that was making a huge impact on the street.
I'll echo the thoughts. I sit on the Heritage Commission, and I think we saw it a year ago, maybe. As far as I know you had to demolish a property prior to that, and we had heard about it before that, but even back a year ago, I think the Heritage Commission was brought into the loop on the raising of the buildings, and we saw it at that point as well. And I know Architectural Design Review has been heavily involved, so.
Sure.
Okay, so if you can read that into the record.
The extern's requesting a waiver on site plan regulations, section 25.02, subsection 1, to allow one pole on North Spring Street and bring overhead utilities across North Spring Street.
So we'll address that in our recommendations. If we get that far under 5, say 3, we'll make a 5 2.5. So we'll have recommendation 5 2.5, which is the waiver that Heather just read into the record, and we'll address that when we get to that point. So any other comments, last chance on the board, and we'll ask for some public testimony?
Just very quickly, one other concern that was brought up by the abutters was during construction. As everybody knows, construction is just one of those things. So far, Cobb Hill Builders has also worked with us. We haven't contracted with them, but they've been a huge asset for us as we went through this project. Likely going to be the contractor, so it's going to be a local person building and a local company. The demolition plan shows that all entry and exit during construction is on through Greenwood Avenue onto Green Street, not in the other routes. The site will be fenced along Warren Street, so there won't be deliveries coming in on Warren Street. We have a staging area out back where the covered parking is. So everything, we tried to put it in places where it's going to have the least amount of impact on the neighbors. Construction's just one of those things.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Okay,
great. Thank you, guys. Okay, we will take public testimony. If anybody'd like to come up and make a comment about this application. Come Hi.
I'm Paige Cannon, and I am the one who wrote the letter. My spouse and I, Jean North, live
Can you just move
directly-
over a seat, Paige? I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Sorry for that. Can't see you behind the computer there.
Thank you. We live directly across the street from what will be the south elevation of the building, as you've been hearing about.
On Warren Street?
Correct.
Okay.
So I think the entryway of the Ekstrom's building will be right across from the entryway of our house, which is an 1850s house that we've loved and maintained since we've lived there about 35 years. So I think Tim Bernier already addressed some of the things in my letter that I sent you, and I also heard about the lighting plan, which gives me some comfort to think that we won't have 20-foot poles outside on the Warren Street side, but they'll be perhaps in the driveway and the entryway that would be addressed, or would be adjacent to the parking. Two things, though, that I didn't hear too much about were our concerns about loading and unloading, which leads me to the concern about how the building will be addressed, if you will, for, mail deliveries and pizza deliveries and pharmacy and emergency, et cetera, et cetera. I know there's not a loading place for food deliveries and things because that's not required in this particular building, but I would point out that 38 people, 38 as a minimum plus, are going to have a lot of traffic, bringing in groceries, bringing in packages, et cetera, and I'm just hoping that whatever can be done to divert traffic can be on the Greenwood side or the Greenwood entrance, and I'm not sure how we achieve that. I would start with the address of the project, but...
So I think I saw in your letter that you wanted some no loading signs put onto the Warren Street side. And again, just can't hurt to ask, so you can't hurt to ask. So that's a very good question. We'll ask the applicant when we come back up. But typically when things change for Federal Express, UPS, usually the owner of the property can identify where whatever number Warren Street might be, they'll address that and say, oh, deliveries come in from this particular point. And we saw that a lot with the Main Street reconstruction when we did some reconstruction where we had to tell FedEx and UPS where to park to deliver to certain properties. So usually that's an easy one. So you could address that with the majority of who's going to be coming to deliver packages. I can't help you with the pizza delivery guys and things like that. So if there's a spot on the opposite side of the street, more than likely they're going to park there and hop across the street unless, to your point, it's a Greenwood Avenue address where they'd be able to come in the back.
It's not the parking, people are entitled to park in the designated parking spaces on the south side of the street, which is where I am. But it's the frequency of people. I mean, people deliver pizzas now, and if you happen to get stuck, on a busy day, you can't have 3 vehicles going through that section of Warren Street. So at any rate, that I just hope that is something that we can continue to work on together, the city, the Extrams, and perhaps with our interest too. The other thing is, I would just ask either through the city process or perhaps with the Extrams that some updates be shared with people in the neighborhood. This has been a process that has been going on, as I understand, for several years. It came to much more light in the springtime and the early summer this year. Mr. Ekstrom was kind enough to come to my house and show me the plans and the drawings. I think it was back in April, perhaps May. But there's a lot of people with a lot of questions. And I certainly don't have them all, but, timeline, when is this going to start? When do people have to move? What are we going to, what's going to happen? If there would be even a way of sending out a note or a letter to people other than the abutters. Many of the abutters are people that know Harold pretty well because he's their landlord, but there's other people on the other side of the street, one rooming house, several duplexes, other single families, and there's been I guess I would say a lack of communication, and I think it would be helpful, particularly at this juncture, as the project is clearly moving forward and has had a great deal of wise counsel around it, that perhaps it's, there must be a way to keep people better informed.
Okay. Anything else? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the facade of the property. You're going to be looking right at it, directly across the street. Any thoughts, comments, concerns? It's a departure from what's going to be there. Which
yes, right.
I'd love to know if you think it's a good departure or a bad departure.
Well, when we first were hearing about this project and thought it was going to look like Firehouse Square, which is a big
probably relieved
of
now,
brick,
right?
we were pretty concerned. Hearing Mr. Carley talk about it tonight, and I was remembering what Harold had talked about as we sat in our dining room and looked at the plans, the idea of sort of a moving facade. I get that. I can see where that will be helpful, and I appreciate the Ekstrom's attention to what the impact will be on the neighborhood and the Ekstrom and the planning department, what the building will look like in the neighborhood. The height is a little daunting, a little scary, but as I also look at many of the houses in the neighborhood, they're already 5-6 steps up from ground, so maybe we're adding sort of like one more story to most houses in terms of what it will look like in that area, as opposed to 2. If you get my, if you get my sense that we're already up, like my house is up, I think 6 steps from curb.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of the floating nature of it and the mansard roof and, you know, the different things, but it still remains to be seen in you know, every sense of the word. It will be a massive structure, 54,000-foot structure in a place that's had single-family duplexes there. It will be, I think, an improvement to the neighborhood to take down some of the buildings that are already being worked on, an improvement in that regard.
Okay.
But not being able to see through it, like I can see through to the parking lot now from my house.
Is that
it will
good
be
or
change.
bad? Yeah.
It's change.
It's change, sure. An unknown change at that point.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from the board? No? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
If I could just point out one thing, as far as the addressing.
Yes.
The building will have an address, I believe, of 58 Warren Street, based on the 911 requirements for the fire department in addressing, so.
Okay, so that brings up a question too. We'd have to address that from the city perspective. You know, if they get a call to 50, would you say the number 50?
58 Warren Street.
So 58 Warren Street, where would ambulance respond to? Would they respond to the back or the front? So, and that's something that I think staff could certainly recommend to EMS and to fire, and that be addressed through Greenwood Avenue.
Yeah, and actually, there will be no Greenwood Avenue once
Right.
this project is
It'll be gone,
finished.
right?
So
Yeah,
it will
it's
be
a driveway.
gone.
It'll be a
So there'll be the existing buildings on Spring or Green will remain with those addresses, but
Okay.
the Greenwood addresses will be no
Okay,
longer.
it's an excellent point and something to think about. So thank you very much for bringing it up.
You're welcome. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, who else would like to speak on this project? Yes, come on up.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to the table. Could you state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Rita Blanchett, and I own a house on 27 North Spring Street. And, can everyone hear me okay?
Just push it back.
And I wanted to voice my concerns from our side of the project. And that although I'm not opposed to this new elderly building, in fact, I'm pretty pleased that it's coming into the neighborhood. But what I do have a concern with is, as everyone knows, we are a block from the elementary school, and I see children walking by my house, you know, every day, you know, at the beginning of the school day and when they leave, and I'm concerned for their safety, because now there's going to be more traffic coming into North Spring Street, and in addition to all of the traffic that we have for parents dropping kids off and picking them up. And my concern is these children are not paying attention, but they're just, you know, out of school and happy to be out. And their safety is my utmost concern with the driveway going into North Spring Street. The other concern I have with the driveway going into North Spring Street is right across the street is Short Street, which feeds into North Spring as well. And there's no clear definition of the right-of-way. So, you know, you can have two head-on vehicles and, you know, there's no stop sign, there's no indication as who can enter. That's another concern I have. The other thing, too, is we have a lot of foot traffic with parents and families going to the little pocket park that we have. Kids riding their bicycles on the weekend. It's a joyous neighborhood, you know, with a lot of families, young children, and You know, it's a very quiet and safe neighborhood for foot traffic and, you know, people walking their dogs. It's just the idyllic, you know, neighborhood. And concerns of that changing with the amount of traffic that's going to start feeding into, you know, that little block that's so contained and safe now is not going to be that way. I mean, parents are going to be more concerned with their children, you know, riding their bike down the block because more traffic's going to be coming in, because the way the Greenwood Ave, is that what we're calling it?
Yeah.
The way that it's a flow-through driveway. That's what I call it, a flow-through driveway. So people may inevitably come from Green Street, flow through, drop someone off, you know, and then come into North Spring Street. So that's definitely going to have an impact on the safety factor in our neighborhood, and that concerns me greatly. The other concern I have is there's another street a block away, and I think it's Prince Street, where the library is.
Yeah, Prince Street.
That street is, when people have to pull out into the traffic to determine if it's safe to, you know, enter North Spring Street. And I have concerns with that happening with the Greenwood driveway as well. You know, people having to pull all the way out because there's cars parked on either side to determine if they can enter the street. And by that time, it's too late. If there's a car coming, then you know, it's a definitely a hazardous condition. I have a concern with that. The other thing, and I have a concern with, and this is not related to North Spring Street, but the elderly citizens in the building crossing Green Street. I walk that route quite frequently with my grandchildren. We walk downtown, and the vehicles on that street, for some reason, don't want to stop for pedestrians. And we've had many incidents where we have to grab our grandchildren's hands and, you know, make sure that they don't proceed as they normally would in any other street in Concord, like Main Street. They'll like, you know, stop on a dime, you know, if you enter the crosswalk. But so I'm concerned with the elderly citizens that are going to be probably walking downtown and having to cross that street when I think it's unsafe. So I didn't know if there was anything that could be done to protect their safety as well. And as far as the pass-through driveway, if there is any way that it could be rerouted to enter onto School Street where fewer children are walking to and from the park or the school, that would be, you know, ideal. And but anyways, these kids are, you know, they're not paying attention. They're happy to be out of school or going to school, and and they're not used to seeing any vehicles in that driveway, because I've probably seen about 3 use that driveway since I've lived in my location for over 10 years. So now there's going to be a constant flow of you know, vehicles, and I do have a concern with the children and the elderly, you know, in that area. So.
Okay, great. Any questions from the board? No? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for hearing
you.
my thoughts and
Thanks very much.
concerns. Appreciate it.
Anybody else like to speak to this application? Last chance? No? Okay. Why don't you guys come back up if you could? Okay, so we heard, you obviously heard testimony. as we did. Any thoughts, comments, concerns?
So the concern I believe the page has is, so on Warren Street here, you have parking on this side, no parking on that side. Right now, there's a driveway every probably 50 feet, there's a driveway. That's going to be one straight long curb line at the end, which with a door here. So her concern might be that delivery people might see that as an opportunity to park there, but there is no parking on that side of the street. So we'll have to work with, once people are in there, we're going to have to work with delivery people. And it's already no parking, so if they park there, they're breaking the law, but we'll have to work with them, be happy to put more signage up, but it's not.
You don't want too much signage, but I think obviously there's probably not a lot of signage there now, and you'll definitely have to have some signage up, just normal, no parking, no loading, unloading.
Sure, definitely probably put on the door or something that no deliveries here, something along those lines.
And again, I think UPS and FedEx have a mechanism to allow you to address it. I don't know about EMS and fire. It won't take them long to figure that out, that the entrance is going to be inside. What about and again, I looked at the plans when I looked at the plans, and I thought, maybe Green Street is one way, maybe, not Green Street, I'm sorry, North Spring Street, that driveway, you'd limit traffic coming in or out. And again, I don't want to get into the issues with it, but I know you've probably looked at it, and are there good reasons or bad reasons it's two-way?
Yeah, so this is an existing driveway, and there's an existing 60-car parking lot back here. And this intersection is miserable in its current condition.
Yeah.
So we're making substantial improvements to this intersection. And even with that, as difficult as it is, on all those people that are parked in that parking lot, very few of them go out Spring Street, because it doesn't really bring you anywhere. So we didn't change it, we're reducing the number of parking spaces, changing it from a business parking lot, because right now a lot of the parking spaces are leased to people who are showing up at the same time that kids are going to school. These people, some of them will be working, so they'll be leaving at the same time and coming back at the same time. But we have fewer cars, fewer people, and because the current traffic patterns are coming out onto Green Street and going out to Street, and as testified to, very few of them actually go out on North Spring Street. So that kind of tells you that'll be the same situation in the Post case. There's no reason why these people would do something different than people have been doing all along, not to mention that we've significantly improved the intersection with Green Street, making it much easier for people to get in and out. So I really think this is where everybody's going to go. As far as we are making improvements to this, sight distance, talked about Prince Street. The problem sometimes occurs where there is parking on North Spring Street, so you need to pull out to get past the cars that are parked there to see if other cars are coming. We have a driveway right here, so there's no parking nearby on this side. I believe there's parking in front of this building, but the sight distance here is much better. And we're going to make improvements to that, and engineering has asked for some good details.
Okay, so on the northbound side, there's not going to be any cars right next to, just scoot over, just scoot that in a little bit, can you, Tim? Just, that's as far as it goes. Or can you zoom in anymore? Yeah, just so yeah. So I'm looking at that spot. So if I was coming up onto Spring Street and I was going to turn right, the only car would be, say, up in front of the walkway on the right-hand side, right? So right there would be maybe a car there.
Yep.
Okay, and then down on the lower part, do you know, or does anybody know what's there now? And could we limit parking to, say, one spot that would be, say, in front of the walkway? I imagine that's a walkway there.
Yes.
So that would be one spot, and then you'd have, say, 15 feet clear to the driveway entrance for your property.
Just a note on the parking, that there is parking right up, today that kind of goes
Right
up
up
to
to
that
the edge,
driveway.
right? It goes right up to the edge.
Just a note on Spring Street, keep in mind, Spring Street's probably 17, 18 feet wide one way with a building that goes right up to the sidewalk.
Right.
Whereas this, you're gonna have a 24-foot drive aisle with two-way traffic, so the people coming out will have more room to look around. So it won't be the same exact situation as Prince Street.
And Prince Street is the one that I think of when I come up by the library. It's terrible to get out of there. But you're right. There's a building and a property right there, and then there's a car right in front of that property. And to the woman's point, you got to pull out into the inner, you got to put out into the road.
I
to
do it
get
every
out.
day
Yeah.
after
Okay.
work.
So I'd be interested to see what the final plans would look like to say, we're not going to have parking right up to the edge of the driveway there, or to see what we could do to maybe have one parking spot in front of that house and have it start, say somewhere right there.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
What about the drive, what about the walkway that goes across there? So again, could we stripe the walkway to make sure people know that this isn't a normal driveway that they can run across? I mean, what's,
here?
right there, yeah.
Sure.
So if you striped it and at least had it so it really stands out, I mean, it's a 24-foot wide there, Brian?
Yes.
24 feet, so it's a wide, normal, it's not a normal-sized driveway, and I think that kind of draws people at that point,
I
yes.
just want to note that engineering has not been in favor of applicants putting striping within the city right-of-way in locations that are not
Well, there
really
you go.
right-of-ways.
Yeah,
I mean, if they wanted to
should have asked engineering
if they
first.
wanted to do some kind of change of paving on their property as a visual cue, some kind of stamped concrete visual cue on their property, that might be something that could help to just be, like I said, a visual cue, but
Yield to pedestrians,
they don't.
stop sign.
Yeah, they haven't supported that.
Okay. Brian, and before I forget, did you have anything else? I know.
One is just so on Warren Street, there already are no parking signs that are in the sidewalk today. They might just need to be moved back off the sidewalk, but there are periodically along that road no parking signs.
Okay. And I don't think we have a problem there, do we? That you know of?
As far as
people parking there. I don't think you'd be able to get by.
I think probably not want to do that,
Block
but
traffic.
I don't know of a problem
Okay.
of people parking on that side.
Hey, Beth, did you have a question? No?
No, I was going to bring up the point, Heather, that just brought up about
Okay,
the
about the
sidewalks.
striping
The
of the sidewalks,
crosswalk,
okay.
yep.
Yes.
I think that's a good point that she was making about, why do we need this driveway here? I think I agree with Tim and others who've said, logically, people just aren't going to go that way. And so my mind would say, oh, well, so why do we need that if people aren't really going to use that? But the reason why we need it and why it's a good idea to be there is for emergency vehicle access and fire. So if we want fire to be going back there, and they may have to, on occasion, go back there, we want them to be able to get through easily and not have to, they just couldn't do it any other way unless.
To get around and
Right,
back out and get through
exactly.
there. So you want that straight shot through to get back
Right.
on. Although they'd have a hard time turning on Spring Street if the cars were there, so maybe fire can weigh in on that as well. Okay, so sorry, I interrupted you. Oh, sorry, Carol, yes.
Well, all of this discussion about emergency access and deliveries has me thinking about the parking configuration at the residence entrance door side. And I'm wondering if it would make sense to have a space or two that's designated for deliveries so that when UPS or whoever came, they had a specific place to park. But I'm also thinking about just fire access, ambulance access with this population. There might be some frequency of EMS arrivals, and it might make sense to just have a little more space available. I want to say in front of the building, assuming that that door is the front for the moment. Just so if an ambulance came, they weren't blocking people that were parking in those spaces. I mean, I don't know. You guys can figure it out, but I think it might it might deserve a little thought.
What's the vegetated buffer at the right side of the double, right where you, what's the buffer space? No, up on the garages, I'm sorry. Go back to that other drawing if you can. Sorry. So at the garages, the double garage, what's that buffer right there? How wide is that? And would that be wide enough to, I hate getting rid of a vegetated area, but if you had to have a loading area or an emergency parking area, or even put 2 parking spots there, could you put 2 parking spots there and get rid of 2 in front of the building?
They have their requirements for internal landscaping, so then that would require more.
So
waivers.
Not ask questions at all anymore.
Sorry.
You know, really with the scale of the use,
I mean, the ambulance is gonna come and park right in front of that garage, and they're gonna park right there until they need to leave. And
Right.
so I'm not worried about
There's
the
always
ambulances
somebody-
at that point, but it's you know, the UPS guy's gonna do the same thing. He's gonna pull right in and either take one of the driveways to the right there, or he's gonna pull right in front of a garage and back out and leave, so.
When they're making those deliveries, a lot of those spaces could be empty. They just park there. I mean, this is a
only gonna be there-
downtown urban situation.
Gonna be there for
Look how
30
they
seconds.
handle deliveries in downtown Concord. You know, these guys know how to park in a keyhole.
these are 24-foot roads, so
Yeah.
if somebody parks, you can get around
Get
them.
around them, okay.
There's plenty of places in here for somebody to park a pizza delivery car and not interfere with traffic. Getting through there, so I don't see that as a big issue. And certainly, if you know, it's 38 people, they're rental units, so certainly the Ekstrom's can ask people to go out Green Street if it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
But I think that you're going to find people are going to be headed in that direction. That's much better way to go. You get out on North Spring Street, you got to go somewhere from there. If you get out on Green Street, you're pretty much where you want to go to get to 93, 333, to get to Main Street, to get out of the city. You go down Green Street and you get on the highway. So that's where they anticipate they're going to go. Yeah, and it would certainly we will work with engineering as signage at the intersections to make sure that if it warrants a stop sign or stop bar or something, to just notify people that they're entering a sidewalk. Certainly, we can work with engineering on that.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, I think we're done. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay. I knock off all my things here, Heather. Did I do it right? I think I did. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing, and any other further discussion from the board or staff? Any comments, concerns that have arisen? No? Yep, Brian?
As usual, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to say that I think that the design of the building has improved considerably since the last version that I
Yes,
saw.
I would agree.
And, I mean, I really appreciate the variegated front. I really appreciate the effort to break up the massiveness of the building with different textures. I appreciate the fact that most of a lot of the textures are natural, which I think will enhance the neighborhood. I share concerns that were expressed by Ms. Cannon about kind of the massiveness of this within a neighborhood, and I have ongoing concerns about the erosion of our historic neighborhoods through the destruction of 19th century buildings. I've said before that I think that the school district started it around the corner with the McAuliffe School, and I do have concerns in that regard. I also have concerns about. Let me say that I'm not wild about age restricted housing. I don't know that I think that that's healthy for either the residents or for our neighborhoods. I think that healthy neighborhoods have a lot of intermingling of different age groups and different groups altogether. I just don't like segregated areas. However, this is, you know, again, as I said, a quantum or a significant improvement over the last design I saw, and it's a great effort to provide more downtown housing. I just would like to see more downtown housing that accommodates every age group rather than just one specific age group. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Comments? Anybody else? No? Okay. Let's take these one at a time if we can. I believe everything from an engineering perspective has been addressed in any of the recommendations we've got here are pushing back to any other things that are open from engineering, right?
Yeah, we're working with them right now just to refine the drainage analysis for the project. There's a 10-inch drain line that currently leaves the site and connects to our drainage system in Warren Street. Our city systems are pretty taxed, so we're working with them to do on-site infiltration and detention to limit the amount of water that would leave the site.
Does lighting fall under that as well, Brian?
as far as.
Any concerns?
We
I'm
did point out
concerned
some
about 20
concerns. Some of the plan did have some levels at the property lines that exceeded the requirements and in a uniformity ratio, but I assume that they're working towards resolving those discrepancies on the plan.
Okay. I'm in favor of more lights, the lower the lights, as far as if it's 2 more lights, if you go down to, 16 feet or 12 feet or whatever the number is, but I'm not in favor of 20-foot poles, if at all possible. So Tim, that's just a recommendation if we got it, and then any type of any wall pack lighting on the fronts of the garages that is down lighting, it would be beautiful. So again, you don't want to light up an open space, and if there's there's no reason to do it, but if we can do it, that would be great. So everything else has been hit on there. So we've got in our packet here, under number 5, recommendations, 5.1 is to grant ADR approval for the site plan of the building as submitted and revised elevations dated October 4th, 2018, with the conditions that the amendment explore balcony framing, support, and railings being darker. Okay, so we didn't address that at all. Black or charcoal colored gray, explore black window framing, look at the belt coursing, if doing granite lentils above the windows and over both entrances, acknowledge the heaviness of the 2nd and 3rd floor, and add heavier columns or fin walls at the ground level. So we're all good?
Yeah, those were in the plans that he showed tonight.
Those were in the plans that we showed tonight, so perfect. So if someone make a motion to grant ADR approval as so eloquently outlined there.
So moved.
That would be great. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 5.2 is to grant approval of conditional use permit pursuant to Section 28-711A to allow, I hate these, next page, for off-street parking to meet the requirements for 21 Green Street with the condition that the applicant shall provide an easement or other recordable legal instrument showing that the use of 4 off-site parking spaces at 57 School Street is permitted. Someone like to make a motion to grant that approval of that CUP as outlined?
Move approval of the CUP.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 5.2.5 will be our additional waiver request. Again, to read it into the record, the Ekstrom's are requesting a waiver of site plan regulation, section 25.02, subsection 1, to allow 1 pole on North Spring Street to bring overhead utilities across North Spring Street. Someone like to make a motion to grant that waiver as outlined?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 5.3 is to grant major site plan approval for the proposed redevelopment of 56/64 Warren Street with a multifamily dwelling for the elderly. Pains me greatly to read that. For the elderly and associated carport and parking lot, common driveways constructed at 21 Green Street, 32 to 36 North Spring Street, and reconstruct parking lot for 21 Green Street, subject to the following precedent and subsequent conditions noted below. Those are outlined in precedent conditions 1 through 6 and subsequent conditions 1 through 4. Anyone like to make a motion to grant that major site plan approval as outlined?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. You guys are all set. Thank you very much. And again, recommendations and our just acknowledgement that you guys have worked very well with the city. It's good to see. So thank you very much for your patience in getting that through the process.
Thank you, guys.
And good luck with the senior housing.
Elderly.
Age-restrictive housing, thank you. Remember that.
That's
No
even
elderly.
better.
All right, well, that was 7F, so we were moving right along, and now we will move on. We've got some items that have been released. 7G is on the agenda, so we'll move to 7G, if we could read that into the record.
Yes, sir. Our last public hearing is Novus Engineering on behalf of Smokestack Realty requesting major site plan approval to construct a new access road and parking areas totaling approximately 22,000 square feet of new impervious area at 254 North State Street in the Institutional District. This application was previously determined complete, and staff can give a quick update.
Great. Is the applicant here? Come on up. Okay, we get a quick staff update.
Sure. This application was determined complete back in June. As Heather said, 22,000 square feet of new impervious area. I will note that this is Phase 4 and Phase 5. on the plans, but we are currently looking at Phase 4 parking improvements, which is 13 spaces, and Phase 5, which is currently not on a timeline, is the remaining 30 spaces of the Phase 4 and Phase 5. There's a waiver request associated with this project, and it's regarding topographic and wetland survey data for the entire site. We have topographic data for the area that the improvements are scoped. These waivers are consistent with waivers that were granted back in 2006, so it is just a consistency matter.
Okay. Hi, welcome to the table. Could you state your name for the record?
Yes, it's Mike Cianci, Novus.
You're with Novus Engineering?
Yes.
On behalf of the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about this project if you could.
Sure. The client is looking to expand some parking along the west side of the structure and install a fire access lane. This was originally a Phase 4 development that was a conditional use permit from 2006. That was at the southern end of the property, and they felt that it would be more appropriate to provide some parking along this west side, add the fire lane, and the parking is really proposed for employee parking only.
Okay, and adding the fire lane, is that you guys doing, or is that the fire department weighing in on the need of a fire lane?
No, I think the desire was to put a fire lane there or a driveway that could act as a fire lane to provide some additional access to that side of the building.
Okay. All right, any comments or questions from the board? Seems pretty straightforward. No more comments from staff? Fairly straightforward. There is a public hearing component, so we'll open the public hearing and ask for any public testimony. I don't know if anybody's here for that. Anybody here for that? No? So we will close the public hearing. We'll send you back on your way, so I think we're good to go on our end.
Thank you.
Before us tonight, recommendations under Section 4 is to grant architectural design review approval for the construction of the new access road, parking area, and associated grading and drainage improvements. I'm going to take these. I don't think there's anything that we need to do separately, is there? Lisa, can we do these all in one fell swoop?
I recommend you just go through them.
Okay, so let's do 4.1 is to grant architectural design review approval as outlined. Someone like to make a motion to grant approval?
Move to grant approval.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 4.2 is to grant the waivers for the following sections. 1503 subsection 3 to not provide topography, survey data outside the project area. Existing topography information is provided for the project area. And section 1203 subsection 5 to not provide wetland survey data for the entire property. There are no wetlands around the project area. However, there are wetlands below the bluff along the eastern edge of the property well outside the project area. Someone like to make a motion to grant those waivers as outlined?
Move that we grant the waivers.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And 4.3 is to grant the major site plan approval for the proposed redevelopment of the subject following precedent and subsequent conditions. We've got precedent condition A, 1 through 4, and subsequent conditions B, 1 through 4 as well. Someone like to make a motion to grant major site plan approval as outlined?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. You're all set. Thank you very much. Okay, 7G is in the books, and I believe that ends our public hearing section for the night. Is that right, Heather? 7I, J, K, and L have all been delayed and pushed off delayed until the November 2018 meeting, correct?
Yes, November
Okay.
20th.
All right, under other business, we've got section 8. Under 8 is Joseph Alosa requesting the discontinuation of Osgood Street. Can we get a staff update on that?
Yes, so Mr. Alosa, I'm actually going to try to pull it up here on the screen for you all to see.
So the request, just for the record, is a petition has been submitted dated October 4th, 2018, to the planning board a petition submitted by Joseph R. Alosa Sr. requesting the discontinuation of Osgood Street, for which he currently provides snow removal in the winter and utilizes as part of his business. Homefield Avenue, is that right? Reading this right?
I think so. Hold on, let me get the map up so we can speak to it. So, he owns.
Yeah, so this is down off of Hall Street, right?
Right. So Mr. Alosa owns all of these properties here, and he's requesting the discontinuance of Osgood Street through here. This is actually showing Osgood as having these sort of dead-end legs here. They don't actually exist. I'll go into that in a second. But he's currently providing snow removal services and basically just serving his property, and he's requested discontinuance for that. The city does have a drainage pipe and a fairly large pipe and outfall here. So we're requesting that an easement be executed prior to council approving any kind of discontinuance. So yeah, previously this road went straight through here, and there was a road called Riverside Drive, I believe, here. That was in 1906. And this section, however, was a paper street. It was never formally accepted by the city. And so in 1926, in accordance with the regulations at that time, this was actually discontinued. So our GIS map was not updated to reflect that fact, but this was discontinued. So right now, this here is actually, according to the tax maps, even though you see two parcels here, this is actually one parcel. There isn't effectively a lot line between here. So this is one parcel. However, over here, in accordance with the tax maps, if you check, these are two separate parcels. So there actually is a property line that runs through here. So we have no problem with the discontinuance because there's no real reason for this street to be a city right-of-way at this time for us to maintain it. However, he does need to merge these two parcels because otherwise he'll have created a lot with no frontage.
Yep.
Because of the location. Once this is discontinued, you know, this will be two separate lots with no frontage.
So where does that property that's on Osgood Street now, is that going to reside on in the lot that's to the top there where your pointer just was? So is that going to be part of that?
Usually the right-of-way underneath the underlying property, the property line is right through the center. So half of the street will go to this parcel, and the other half of the street will go to this parcel.
Okay, and then we'll have an easement on that property?
And then, yes, we'll have an easement for access and maintenance for the stormwater pipe.
So they might use it for parking or, you know,
They can't put any structures.
They can't put any structures over, but they could park on it.
Well, they're using it, it's basically in the driveway, so they can continue using it for their driveway access, essentially. No buildings can go on it, but yeah, if they wanted to park there, they could.
Okay.
So this parcel also would need to be merged because once this is discontinued, this parcel will have no frontage. So staff is recommending approval. We have no issues with it, but he does need to complete a merger and have the easement executed prior to council approving the discontinuance or granting the discontinuance. So staff is recommending that the board recommend approval.
So our piece in this is recommending to City Council the discontinuation of Osgood Street as indicated in the accompanying plan, provide an easement for access to maintain the city's stormwater facility has been granted, and provide lots that have been merged as needed to avoid nonconformities. So would someone like to make a motion to recommend to City Council that recommendation? There's no public hearing component, right? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to recommend to City Council the discontinuation of Osgood Street as outlined in the report?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, so that will be off to the City Council to decide. Item 9, if we could read item 9.
Jonathan Halley, on behalf of Raymond Bosno, requests to rezone 70 Pembroke Road from the Office Park Performance District to the Opportunity Corridor Performance District and amend the OCP district to allow multifamily residential uses citywide.
Great. Could we get welcome you guys up to the table if we could, and we'll get a quick overview from staff, report from staff. Or not. I don't know. Do you need to come up?
There's not
No?
a public hearing
Okay.
component. They can come up. I mean, you can still invite them up if you. there's not a formal public hearing.
Okay.
But I don't think there's anything against if you would like them to come up to speak.
No, that's fine. If you can tell us about it.
Sure. I just want to bring it up also. So
this is a property off of Regional Drive, Pembroke Road, just to the south?
Yes.
right, it's
South
across from
of
the
the-
airport, between
Was the Centennial Center, right?
Pembroke and Regional
Whatever
Drive.
it is now. Okay.
So, Mr. Halley approached the city with an office park concept for this site. This was a site that was also identified in the as part of the Concord Code update for like visioning and rezoning. So we started conversations about what might be in the city's better interest for this property to have other types of uses on there, other types of mixed uses, pedestrian-oriented uses, potentially housing. And so from there, the discussions about what might be a better plan for this site. And, several ideas were generated, and we came to the next question was, what should the zoning be to allow something that might be in the better interest of the community and the city for this site? And so we came to the OCP, Opportunity Corridor Performance District, because it most closely aligned with the type of mixed-use development or flexibility to have different types of housing and different types of uses on that site. And a plan that would really connect potentially Regional Drive with Pembroke Drive and have, an interconnected comprehensive site instead of basically pad sites, which is what the original concept was. We're just disconnected office park pad sites. So that was basically how we came to this recommendation and to this ask. Staff is in support of it because it really represents more of the direction that we were headed towards anyway for the Gateway Performance, Office Park Performance, Loudon Road Corridor type development. And it looks like there are parties that are interested in investing in that concept. So that could be pretty exciting. What am I missing?
So what happens to the existing 115,000 square foot building? Does that stay?
Well,
we don't care, actually.
The concept
'cause
that's
it's just
being looked at right
it's
now
just a zoning.
would maintain that building.
Yep.
So the Opportunity Corridor Performance and I should address the master plan. It refers to Opportunity Corridor Performance in terms of its location between Main Street and the highway. However, it also talks about it as being an opportunity for brownfield redevelopment. That's what the zoning ordinance says. The purpose of the Opportunity Corridor Performance is for brownfield redevelopment. When we finally get to updating our zoning code, there will be more opportunities for this type of use and this type of development. But right now, really the only thing in our code that approaches the type of development that we would want to encourage is the central business performance or the Opportunity Corridor Performance. Those are the only districts that sort of allow the flexibility for some kind of more dynamic, pedestrian-oriented, mixed types of uses. So since it appears the zoning does support Opportunity Corridor Performance in locations other than where we traditionally think of it as, staff is in support of using that designation for this. Question?
Yeah, so okay, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely, yes.
So essentially, if we were to approve this, there would be two OCP areas. I mean, there would be what we traditionally consider the Opportunity Corridor to the, between 93 and downtown.
Right.
And then there would be this.
Right.
So when we talk about adding multifamily residential to the OCP district, we're really talking about these two areas right now.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And that's also, thank you for bringing that up, because that's also a change that, in my opinion as staff, would be beneficial for the OCP district to allow multifamily housing in that area. And I think at the time, it was thought it was not seen as desirable for tax purposes or trying to get bigger commercial stuff in there. But we need housing, and that's a great if multifamily housing would want to locate there. I was surprised. I did not realize that it wasn't permitted. It's currently permitted only if the parcel is adjacent to a CVP district. So what we're proposing now are really changes that we anticipated making anyway, and we're asking to do them now, or we're recommending to do them now to facilitate some type of development on this property at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is this, I know it's not exactly the same, but is this somewhat like the concepts that are being proposed for some of the malls around the country that are primed for redevelopment because their function as a mall is not?
Yeah, and I don't think that there's, I think this project will be more weighted towards multifamily with some ancillary types of other types of uses, amenities for the multifamily. But that is the idea for that type of thing. It gives more flexibility to allow that type of thing. And I don't think it will be that type of town center where there's a lot of retail type uses. It'll be basically multifamily. And there's no those that are in place. There's no, this is all sort of conceptual at this point. We're just sort of trying to create an environment to allow conversations to continue and to be attractive for potential investors. Yeah. So I think it will be more geared towards multifamily, but the OCP allows them to add, if they wanted to add like a little restaurant in the corner or something like that for that use. It also is much more from a circulation and pedestrian type perspective. The goal is to have more integrated comprehensive development, whereas the previous concept was really, as I was saying, geared more towards pad sites. And if you know that type of sort of vehicular oriented development tends not to be more integrated in terms of circulation. There's maybe twisty, windy roads and things that aren't connected because you're trying to minimize connection in those scenarios. So this would be more like, hopefully, something that is more of a grid type or interconnected, connecting the streets. They previously had the assumption that staff would not support connections between Pembroke and Regional Drive. And I don't think that's true. I think that we are in support of making it easier for people to get from one place to another and having that sort of integrated circulation.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman? Will the businesses who are currently in the old Sprague Electric building be displaced by this? And if they are going to be displaced, are there any efforts to work with the city's economic development director to be sure that they are relocated within Concord?
I think this might actually be a better question for some of our representatives of the property at this time. I'm. No and yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
No and yes.
No and yes. Well.
No, they're not going to.
And yes, we've already started talking to Susie
about other stuff. Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Sure.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
John?
More of a comment is, many brownfield sites have been redeveloped for housing. Some haven't been because of environmental concerns, and particularly something that's like a full manufacturing facility. Again, in some cases, those have been...
Pull your mic a little closer, John, sorry.
Some of those have been successfully redeveloped. And I don't know what the city's role is with something like this, but obviously you would not want to have a housing project that was not successful because something was discovered.
Right.
Would be to, and you get something like this that's probably been around for a long time, and if you're going to change the use, how do you make sure that you've done your environmental, or encourage people to do the environmental due diligence so that it's, consistent with that proposed, future use. And that may be a good point. Question that.
My understanding of that situation is that the brownfield is currently being mitigated and maintained, I think, by the previous party that's responsible for doing that. In some of the concepts that have been generated that I've seen, there's no buildings proposed in that location. It would be more like where it would be capped, I think, is what I heard. And so it would be not where the buildings would be proposed. And I don't know if there's anything else anyone wants to add.
Good point. Okay, any other comments or questions, concerns? So again, this is a recommendation to council. So again, reading through the last couple of days, reading through the issues, it seems like a great project for great use.
Yeah.
So recommendation on our end would be to, staff recommends that the planning board recommend approval of the applicant's request to council to rezone 70 Pembroke Road to OCP and add multifamily residential to the OCP district citywide. Would someone like to make a motion to recommend to council that exact recommendation as it's outlined there?
I enthusiastically move approval.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded enthusiastically for the record. Any, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And that's good. Thank you, guys. Okay, so under other business as well, Teresa, I know you wanted to make a comment for the record.
Right. I wanted to make a comment for the record. I had asked for reconsideration of the Bangor Savings Bank approval, and I was told by the city solicitor, I was going to say lawyer, solicitor, that was not appropriate. So I just would like to go on the record saying that having seen the design that came out of our approval, but even prior to that, I would have changed my vote to no. I've looked at the building, and I've looked at it. The video we saw was coming from CVS. And when I looked at it looked at the buildings coming actually from Center Street, I really do think the windows on the third floor, it could have been done appropriately so those windows were preserved and a good modern structure could have been built in with it. I think it would be a great project to look at old and new. That's a concern of the windows. The second concern is that it's not consistent with the design guidelines. Third concern is that ADR had asked that the design go back to them before we approved it. It didn't. Third concern is I don't know that any of you have seen the design that we said, fine, it's conditional approval with a new design. I will honestly say, looking at the new design, I'm not happy with it. I particularly don't like the fake granite, since we live in the granite state, but we did approve that. So I just want to go on the record, because when that building's built and there are any comments, I want to go on the record saying that I, like Byron, would prefer to vote no on what we approved, and what I've seen now, I would definitely have voted no. I just want that for the record. Okay. And that's it.
It is duly noted.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to item 10, if we could, the Concord Next zoning update, character analysis feedback.
Yeah, can I actually just make a comment on
Yep.
that?
Sure.
On that last?
Yep.
The reason, I just wanted to state for the record, the reason that the city solicitor had said that it wasn't appropriate was because any consideration would effectively been a revocation of the original approval, which there are RSA statutory requirements that govern. And so when he looked at when you look at the statutory requirements for revocation of approval, I have them right here, and I can forward them to anyone else who might be interested to know what they are. It has to do with, for instance, if the work's not performed as it was agreed upon, or if they did something they weren't supposed to do, or if timelines weren't met. So they're very specifically related to concrete things about not being done, or not being done as promised, or not meeting timelines that were agreed upon. So I can forward those. I think that there was potentially some confusion about calling for a reconsideration because of the way we had done it previously. That was related to traffic impact fees, so there was no property at stake, and that was a decision that wasn't regulated by the RSAs, so we didn't run into in that scenario. In this scenario, we have to make sure that we're abiding by the RSA statutes that govern planning board approvals, and ADR fall under what would be considered the site plan approvals. So I just wanted that stated for the record of why that was.
I wanted to thank the city planner for that explanation. That clarifies it considerably. I also want to thank Teresa for her comments. I fear that is one of the decisions that this planning board has made that we will come to regret collectively. I've been walking by that building a lot and looking at those third-story windows and how they're contiguous with the streetscape, and the horses out of the barn. But thank you, Teresa. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so let's read, what do you got for 10?
Sure, just very quickly, I wanted to let you know that I have met with the zoning board. I had a special meeting with them. It went really well. They asked a lot of great questions. I think they're really valuable insight because of their role as in granting variances and dealing with the ordinance in that way. I'm going to give a presentation tomorrow morning to the chamber, 7:30 a.m. Is anybody going to be at that meeting?
Yes.
All right, I'll be there, 7:30 a.m.
Don't want to commit to it yet.
Quick
but-
presentation. And is their annual board meeting?
Yes,
Is that
yep.
what it is?
It's it's the monthly board.
Just a monthly
Board,
meeting.
okay. Yeah, I'll be giving a presentation to them, and then the consultants will be in town November, I will tell you the dates because we know what they are now. November 8th, we will have a public meeting the evening of November 8th, probably 6 to 8 p.m., most likely in this room. They will also be here the 9th. So staff will be working with them during the day on both of those days, just working on the project. And then the evening of November 8th, we'll have a public meeting. And I will send you all formal invitations to that.
Please do.
They'll be here for a short time, but we hope to get a lot of work done. And they'll be there to field questions. They may have more information to provide, an update, expanded version of the outline that they've presented so far. I encourage everyone to come because it's a great time to hear their take on where we're at and what we're doing. And it's a great time to ask them any questions that you may have, but just really to hear their take on where we're at and where we're going and what they've been doing so far. I think I've tried to represent what they've told me well, but I think it could really be helpful for people.
6 to 8?
6 to 8 on the 8th.
I'm afraid I'll be in Claremont delivering a lecture.
So it'll be, council will be invited, planning board, zoning board, everyone will be, all of our boards, committees, and commissions, and of course, the general public are encouraged to come.
Okay.
Concord TV be doing that?
Yes, Concord TV. We will ask Concord TV to.
Yeah, sure. Is that it for that one?
Yes.
Okay, and again, just as a reminder to update your recurring meeting for the November Planning Board meeting will be Tuesday, November 20th here in Council Chambers, same bat time, 7 o'clock. And it is obviously a different sequence, so it'll be the week before it normally would be, or after, right? No, before.
What?
Week before.
It's the same. It's
the day.
It's the day before, not the week before. Sorry, it's the day
It's just the
before.
day before. Tuesday the 20th.
Okay, Tuesday instead of Wednesday.
Correct.
Okay.
Otherwise, it messes all our other meetings
Yeah,
up.
absolutely. Okay, any other business to legally come before the board?
So I did, regional, yep.
Yeah,
So I printed out a copy of this, and I just wanted to let you know. So they've been working on this for months. Alan Hirschleg's Councilor Hirschleg's on their board, and it occurred to him, hey, I haven't had staff or planning board take a look at this. So I took a look at it.
What is it, Heather? Sorry.
The Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission draft guidelines for recommendations on whether a project should be determined of regional impact. And so I don't think these are necessarily new, and a lot of what's in here is just referencing the RSAs. But one thing that we did notice was they say the local land use board must vote on whether a project is of regional impact. And so the implication is that every single project that comes before us, every site plan, every subdivision, every project, even if it's any project in any, if it's a building permit that needs to be voted on whether or not it's of regional impact. And so I looked at the section of the RSAs, I sent it to the city solicitor, the solicitor's office to ask them if they thought this was the interpretation. I followed up with Michael Tardif, director of the RPC. And so we're sort of trying to figure out, like, where did this interpretation come from? Is this really what it means? It's based on a court case that basically says, in this one instance of a project, the municipality considered whether or not it was a regional impact. They didn't vote on it, and a butter who was in opposition to the project brought the case to court and won a rehearing based on the fact that no motion was made on whether or not it was of regional impact. So the court didn't care whether it was or not of regional impact. They cared the fact that they didn't vote.
There wasn't a vote for it. Oh,
right.
Interesting.
And so I'm not sure if that same logic would hold up if it was, for instance, say, a lot line adjustment on City Hall, or something that's, well, that's not a good example because it's municipal property, but a lot line adjustment in the center of town. Because in that particular case, it was like a golf course and a subdivision, and it was something that probably was of regional impact. So anyway, we're trying to get clarification on that. And in any case, this is just their guidelines, it's their recommendations, but I pointed out to them, well, you're basically saying here, this is a little bit more than your recommendation. You're saying your interpretation is that we shall be, every single application, doing this, and we're not doing it. So once we get some clarification, we'll find out if we need to alter our procedures, and if that's something that we need to add in on every single report, and that now we're going to have to be doing this motion on every single project.
Could it be done in totality? Could we, right at the beginning of the meeting, say that, motion's been made, that we found none of these projects to be of regional impact?
I mean, if it
just
turns
a
out,
boilerplate, but I mean,
if the recommendation from the solicitor's office is that, yes, we should be doing that just to be on the safe side, we'll figure out the most inconspicuous way to do it.
I'm trying to remember how we've done it in the past, because I know we've decided, and maybe they're trying to say that if you decide that it is, then you need to vote to say that it is, not that every time you declare, you need to have a vote, rather than that you need to make a determination on every.
I wondered the same thing. The RSAs do say whether or not. It says you must determine whether or not. It doesn't say you shall take a motion or make a vote. It says determine. So I think that I sort of had the same question that you have, and it does say whether or not. So I think that's what it hinges on.
so we'll get some clarification on that and figure out how to move forward. Right?
Correct.
So I believe that, I can't remember if we tabled it.
Oh, in the past.
At the.
You're in the regional.
I'm on the.
You're in the regional.
Meeting
yeah.
also.
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of make sure that we figure out
What the
before
impact
the
is.
next vote is, so I know what to do at the next meeting.
So, and to answer your question, in the past, staff had brought things to you and said, this is, it's a location, it has this impact, we recommend that you determine it a regional impact, and then a motion is made and a vote is taken. So you've always made motions in the past when we thought that it was.
But they're usually border-related issues or traffic-related issues or, water-related issues or something like that that has impact in other towns.
Correct.
Right, okay. So this might not, is what you're saying, is if something was in the center of town, there's no regional impact, obviously. Well, there could be. I mean, it could be
literally, if it's like a
regional
lot
impact.
line adjustment in the center of town, is that something that we should be making a motion on and having in our staff report?
Okay.
And that's kind of what we need to know.
All right, any other business to come before the board?
iPads. So some of you I have not heard from about whether you would like to be able to take the iPads home or whether you want them to stay. And I would really like to hear from everyone. So a few of you have responded, a few of you have not.
But just from a clarification perspective, you want it all or nothing, right? I mean, you're not looking to have some people keep them and.
If there's one person who's uncomfortable with it, I don't think we mind bringing an extra iPad for.
And then how do you handle the alternates? You'd have them as the extras, so they'd have one here, right?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. I was assuming that they would get them as well, but I hadn't thought about that.
Are we the only ones that because there was other,
Yeah,
it looks like there's other people that use this.
Architectural
Yeah, so
design
there's-
review uses it now, but they're going to use the Chromebooks, is that right? Or no?
So the plan is that the tentative plan, council has updated their iPads, and they're extras that haven't been allocated to other places yet. And so we would take those and use them for ADR. And then moving forward in the future, it's possible that we would ask in the budget for additional funds to purchase additional iPads, not just for ADR, but also potentially for Concom or any other TPAC or any other board or any other of the committees or subcommittees that could make use of them. I mean, I would encourage DBA to do it, but we don't run that division.
I have to say that I find it much more convenient to have the iPad to look
You
at
can read
things at home.
everything, yeah.
Yeah, you can read everything, but when I was watching staff pull up things from the website, I just find it much easier here because you really touch, and you're into it.
So a few of the pros are that you can download the agenda before the meeting from home, and then things will load faster. You can open everything at home, and then when you get in the meeting, everything will open faster. You can review it from your home. I think the iPad's much easier to access the information than like laptop or desktop.
Yeah, I mean, one of the drawbacks is that I haven't found a way that you can, open one screen and then open another one. You really have to go, it's more linear.
We can show you that. We figured it out.
Well, if you can show it to me, then I'd like to know that.
It's a bookmark.
Then I have no reservations.
Because we try to do that with the ADR minutes, to
Yep.
keep them open, so, because it's always nice to look at those as you're.
Yeah, scroll back and
Yes,
forth.
right,
Yep.
yeah.
And you can do that.
Good, then you can teach me.
Anyone opposed to taking it home with them? Irresponsibility-wise, if you drop it in the street and it gets run over by a car, you'll get a bill. No, it's a.
My kids will take it.
Your kids will take it. Well, you're
Well, so-
responsible for it,
So
so.
they won't be able to, as far as I know, where it stands right now, you won't be able to put any software on it. It'll still be accessible with IT, and it'll basically just be what you have now. You'll take it home. We're going to talk to Eddie Draus, the IT director, about if we want to change that. So council's able to put software on theirs and upload and download. You have your own emails. But that's not currently how we're envisioning this being. So it would really just be what's on here. I mean, obviously, you could use the internet from wherever you are, but. No
Anyone
one's
opposed,
against it.
anyone opposed to that? Again, I think the only issue would be alternates, so as long as you kept a stash of them here, that when an alternate got here, you'd be able to keep it, then I think we're good.
It just turns itself off.
Okay,
Right?
perfect. Good to know.
There's a
Thank
Now,
you.
Heather, do we have to, I mean,
yeah.
a lot of places make you sign some sort of computer
Yes,
use policy.
yep, we have a policy that
shuts off
I'm meeting with legal and with
sleep.
IT to tweak it, to make it appropriate for planning board, because right now it's the council tablet policy, so we have to update it for the planning board, and we'll try to do that by next month. I also want to confirm that we can get those other iPads for ADR, because if we can't get a second set for ADR, I'm really not inclined to do it, to allow planning board to take them home, because they've become indispensable for ADR. So it looks like we will have the second set for ADR, but we want to confirm that before we say, okay, you're allowed to take it home now. So you have to give them back tonight, in other words.
Good Christmas gift, huh? Here you go, and give it back.
I have two items that I would like to bring up.
Oh, certainly. We've got all
'Cause I don't want
kinds of
anybody to
things
go
off of
home.
the agenda here.
No, that's real quick. Two things. We have meetings for the upcoming revisions, proposed revisions to the ordinance for solar, for clarifying
Oh,
solar.
yes, yep.
I'll send you all the flyer. I haven't done that yet. October 27th at 10 a.m. at Beaver Meadow Golf Course. And then Monday, the 29th at 6 p.m. here. Same meeting, we're just having two sessions to try to get as many people as possible.
And you'll send those out, notices out?
I'll send that out tomorrow. Yeah,
Thank you.
I should have sent them out earlier. And then there's a new street tree or Concord Tree subcommittee that's being formed through the Conservation Commission. And we're trying to send out requests for volunteers to send letters of interest. And those come to me by October 31st. If you are interested or if you know anybody interested, have them contact me. And Conservation Commission will be making nominations in November. And first meetings will happen either November or December to start planning for the spring.
Great. All right, anybody else?
Thank you for remembering us.
There's something happening this weekend.
Yeah.
Municipal Association.
Oh, is there a municipal?
Oh, the NHMA.
NHMA,
Yeah.
this Saturday,
Municipal
November 3rd, all
Association
day.
Annual meeting, yep.
No.
Not
it's this
annual
week.
meeting.
It's a,
No,
November 3rd
Works-
is conservation.
It's a workshop.
Sorry, it's this Saturday.
Work session, yep.
Did you want to?
Well, I have it on my calendar, but I haven't really decided.
I think you have to sign up for it. Don't I have to sign up for it?
Right now,
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah, you will let us know. And we have funds, so we can send you if you would like.
Okay, I need to look at the agenda one more time.
Just reach out to Lisa when you decide. Let her know.
I have to call them in the morning anyway, so if you could let me know
as soon as possible.
Is it in Concord again?
Yes.
Yes.
This
Right
one
at
is
the
just,
Colonial? Yeah.
it's all three of their seminars.
All mushed into
I
one
think
day.
I went last year. David Fox. and I went last
I
year.
don't think that was this one.
No?
Just let me know as soon as.
Okay, I'll stop talking.
Pressure.
Okay.
Time are you calling me?
I'll wait till 9:30. I'm just fearful that there isn't any room,
Well,
so I'm gonna call them anyway.
call them, see if there's room. If there's room, I'll go, and if there isn't.
You won't.
I'm going, so you have to. Or I hope that, if
I'm
there's room.
gonna-
I-
I'm sure there's.
No, that's what she's calling.
Tomorrow to get
All right.
people signed up.
We'll take that offline. How about that? How about
Sounds
we
like a
take a
good
motion
idea.
to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah.
Motion's been made and seconded. Anybody? Carol?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.